Okay, I am admitting the public right now. Give it just a minute here.
There's Phil.
Mr. Johnson, you join us.
Sean, I'm not hearing anything, so I'm going to log out and come back.
And Lou is low.
Oh, no one was talking.
Let's wait for Phil to come back in. But should I start the meeting?
Sure.
Yeah, or you can wait for Phil. Either one.
Why don't you start?
Yeah, I'll start. Well, the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission for January 8th, can you believe it? 2025. Please come to order. This evening's meeting will be a virtual Planning and Zoning meeting hosted by Zoom. During this meeting, our procedures will be as follows. When you first enter the Zoom meeting, you will be in a virtual waiting room until the meeting host admits you. Please be aware that your camera, if you have one, and your microphone may be muted by the meeting host when you enter the meeting. You can turn on your camera at any time so that it can be seen by others when and if you choose to. In order to run an efficient and orderly meeting in this virtual environment, unless stated otherwise by the meeting chair during the meeting host may keep everyone other than the commission members muted. You will be able to hear everything said by the commission members, even if you are muted and or your camera is not on. There will be an opportunity for public comment during public hearings, at which time public participants will be unmuted. During the public hearing, the applicant will be invited to present the application, explain to the commission and others present what is being requested. The meeting host will share all related documents on the screen as needed. In addition, all applications and supporting materials for each application on the agenda have been available through a direct link on the Planning and Zoning page on the town's website. Comments of town agencies will be discussed as applicable to the application. There will be clarifying questions from the commissioners, and the town planner will direct our attention to additional items pertinent to their application. After all commissioners' questions are exhausted, those who wish to speak in support or in opposition to the application will be asked to come forward, state their name and address for the record, and make a statement. The applicant will then have an opportunity to address any questions or concerns raised by the public or commissioners. Once the public hearing is closed, the applicant is free to leave or remain for the balance of the public hearing and the regular meeting, during which the commission will try to reach a decision on each application. Each applicant will be notified in writing as to the decision of this commission and has a right to appeal to the Supreme Court if desired. Decisions of this meeting are available the day after the meeting by calling the Planning and Zoning Department at 203-453-8039 or by emailing planning.zoning@guilfordct.gov after 9 a.m. All actions taken on applications tonight by the commission will be by roll call. All commissioners and staff will identify themselves for the record before speaking. Seated this evening are the following members who will please identify themselves. So, Mr. Bill Freeman.
Bill Freeman.
Mr. Roger Joyce.
Roger Joyce.
Ted Sands. You're
You're on.
muted. Unmute yourself, Ted. Okay. Is Phil there? Did Phil come back?
Not yet.
Nope.
All right. We have Bill, we have Roger, we have Ted. So we need some alternates if Phil does not come in, right?
Phil's just arriving now.
Okay.
There we go.
Mr. Johnson, we were waiting for you.
My apologies. I don't know, I do this all day and yet somehow when it comes to like something else, it's either going to some other meeting or whatever it is, but glad to be here.
All right. So we have full-time commissioners of Bill, Roger, Ted, and Phil. And we should probably add some alternates.
You can add
And-
two.
Add two. So I think Larry, you stood aside last time, so I think you're going to stand in tonight.
Okay,
All right. So Larry Rizzolo.
here.
Let me see. Don, I think you stood in last time, so I think I'll call on Bob.
That's fine. Yeah, I said in the last two meetings.
Right. Mr. Harrington.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You're on. We have a quorum. Okay. So, the agenda,
Do you want me to read the legal notice?
if you would like to. Yes.
Well, Ann says we don't, I saw a head shake there. so-
Yeah, it's not necessary. And
Oh,
it's
okay.
very time consuming.
Well, I was going to ask if everything.
No, and Phil, we love the sound of your voice, but
Oh.
let's bypass that.
Sound like my kids.
If I may, Mr. Chair, if I could make a comment at the beginning of the meeting, just on the record. We have in Town Hall South in the last 2 months have seen an increase of very aggressive and inappropriate behavior by applicants. And our staff has been threatened numerous times, has been verbally abused. I had to call the police today. I would just like to remind everybody that this is a democracy and we all have a voice, but we also have to keep our composure and be civil to one another. And the next person who walks into Town Hall South who's threatening will be asked to leave because we can't function with the level of hatred that we are getting on a daily basis. So I just wanted to put that on the record. I shouldn't have to, obviously, but it is what it is.
Sorry to hear that, Ann. I'm glad you responded with, a police response when appropriate as well to be sure that everyone is safe.
Okay, that said, Mr. Chair, we have quite a few public hearing items. I don't know if the majority of them were tabled at the last meeting. I don't know if you would first like to make a motion to remove everything from the table and we can start afresh.
So moved.
Second,
I think the chairman had something to say.
Yeah, I just would, so Ann, I am
We lost you, Sean.
We lost your
Your audio cut
audio.
out.
No,
Nothing.
Oh,
There we go.
huh.
There you go.
Good.
You ready?
yep.
Yes.
So I'm upset, I'm sorry, and I'm concerned about your comments about the public being disrespectful and threatening. And I am going to look into that. The first items on our agenda are text amendments. Should I just move that that we go to that?
I think, well, we have, some were tabled, some were not, so to kind of expedite the process and make sure everything gets taken off the table, if we could just vote on that motion to untable, if there is such a verb, all the items that were tabled last time.
Lift off the table.
Lift off the table. There you go.
Huh.
So we had a
All right.
motion and a second. I think we just need a vote.
Okay, let's hear a vote. Bill Freeman,
Yes.
Mr. Joyce,
Yes,
Mr. Harrington,
Aye.
Mr. Sands,
Yes.
Mr. Rizzolo,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
I think that does it.
Okay. Our first item on the agenda, and I hate to do this to you because you just untabled everything, is 150 Church Street, map 46, lot 142, zones R1 and the Church Street Overlay District. The applicant agent, Doug Williamson of Williamson Design Planning, for the owner, 99 Little Meadow LLC, Inga Davidson. Special permit for an accessory structure exceeding 750 square feet. This applicant is not ready to be heard tonight, so if we could vote to place that one item back on the table, I'd appreciate it.
I will move that.
Motion to, sorry, motion to table 150 Church Street.
I'll second that.
All right, hear a vote. Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Mr. Joyce,
Yes,
Mr. Harrington,
Yes.
Horace Sands,
Yes.
Mr. Rizzolo,
Yes.
and Phil Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the text amendment, the ADU provisions. The applicant is myself on behalf of the town of Guilford. This is a text amendment to clarify the provisions for ADUs. I can bring up each individual text amendment on the screen, or we can just discuss them and I can bring them up if we need them. I'm only operating with one screen tonight, so it's easier if I just talk to you for a moment and then I can bring it up. So the first text amendment, we've discussed all of these previously, but there's a contradiction in the ordinance where, if we're reading it strictly, an accessory dwelling unit which exceeds 700 square feet in coverage would require a special permit. Our prior discussions have indicated that that was not the intention of the commission, that the idea was that ADUs could be as of right with a zoning permit. So this text amendment exempts ADUs larger than 750 square feet from the special permit requirement. And in addition, we've had only a few ADUs in the past, well, since these regulations have been adopted, but there was a request from the engineering department that all ADUs use and be served by the existing driveways on site, so that we are not increasing exponentially the number of curb cuts in town. So those are the two changes for this text amendment. These are all public hearing items, and we forgot to open the public hearing, so we might want to do that as well.
I move we open the public hearing.
Second.
motion.
Bill Freeman,
Yes.
Roger Joyce,
Yes,
Mr. Harrington,
Yes.
Mr. Sands,
Yes.
and Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I will vote yes as well.
Larry, sorry.
No
Mr.
worries.
Chairman, are you voting in these counts?
I'm voting yes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sands.
I have a question.
Discussion?
Yeah, I have a question. Are those two items bundled together in the same text amendment?
Yes, they are.
So is it, just curiosity, is it in our purview to restrict driveway and access along roads?
Yes, you can. It's a site plan issue, so you can do that. Let me bring it up for you so you can take a look at it.
Well,
Yeah, I
if somebody
think-
wanted to have, if they wanted to have a second driveway, they would have to ask us for a special permit, wouldn't they?
If you make this change, they would need a variance.
Okay.
Is there-
So that would, a variance would come before us or come before the
Variances would come before the ZBA.
ZBA, right?
You
Right.
could
Is-
change this text so that I suppose you could change it so that a request, the idea was that we are trying to completely discourage a second driveway because of the issues involved. But you, I suppose, do have the option of making a request for a second driveway subject to a special permit instead of the ZBA.
Yeah, because if someone has a 5-acre piece of property that abuts on two roads and they want to put a driveway off of the other road to the barn or whatever structure, that doesn't seem to lend itself to practicality. That they would have to not be able to do that.
So my only comment is if it has any implications for their neighbors. So, I am all for, I mean, I think we unanimously are for ADUs, but I just want to be sure that we're not opening a doorway to something that would upset adjoining neighbors. I welcome your comments.
I have a quick couple questions and a comment. These are for structures in excess of 750 square feet. Is there a limitation on the structure size?
Only based on coverage or floor area bulk standards.
Well, wait a minute. An
And-
ADU can't be
Yes.
bigger than the primary residence, can it?
Right, it can only be 50% of the gross floor area of the finished gross floor area of the principal structure, or 1,200 square feet, whichever is less.
Correct.
And
Plus,
after 1,200 square feet, what happens?
You can't go bigger than that.
you would have to get a variance.
Oh, after 1,200 square feet, you have to come back for a special permit.
That's not how it's written.
Oh,
The general feeling about, a secondary driveway. That's the thing that
Well, I guess my
I
concern is
I do not want to restrict, someone's rights for, a property that is appropriate for that, but I want to make sure that we're not, doing something that prohibits them from doing
I think
something.
is the question, Ann, whether we keep it within our purview under a special permit if they want two driveways, or have it go to ZBA? Is that where we're kind of coming down
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and if we're gonna make changes to this proposed text amendment, I really should redraft it, and we should table it after I get whatever your desires are, and we talk about it again next month.
Okay.
Because I don't want to draft language on the fly and get it wrong.
I agree.
like to make a motion to table the ADU text amendment modification till our next meeting.
This is a public hearing, so we really
Ah.
should hear from the public first.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Well, before we do that, I think we should probably see if we're in agreement about whether or not the going to ZBA is appropriate or the special permit's appropriate. Just kind of see where we are.
So obviously the thing with the ZBA is in order to have your variance granted, you have to demonstrate a hardship.
Right.
And just because someone wants to have their ADU next to, the far side of their 5-acre property and close to the road, that doesn't make it a hardship. So that's the significant difference between us reviewing it under a special permit and having the flexibility versus a strict reading of the rules for ZBA.
Correct.
Okay. Well, I'm certainly for the special.
I think it
permit.
would be easier for an applicant standpoint to seek a special permit than a variance.
And I would agree,
Concur.
Phil. I think it'd be important to note that if we go past through planning and zoning on this, we have the opportunity to approve or not. So it gives the commission that review authority, if you will, so that if there is an issue, we can so state it and recognize it and deny it if it makes sense.
Or not granted.
Ah.
How you look at it.
Right.
This is Larry Rizzo. I would concur with that, keeping it as a special permit or making it a special permit.
Yeah, I agree also, Larry.
As well.
So we still need to have public comment, correct?
Yep.
Mr.
let's-
Chair, you may want to invite the public if anybody would like to testify on this issue.
But I certainly invite public comment on this. Yeah. So how do we?
If I may,
effectively-
if anybody from the public would like to speak on this item, would you please raise your hand in the Zoom app? Again, if anybody would like to testify on this item, would you please raise your hand? Okay, I have nobody.
Yeah, okay.
All
You
right.
could, you may not want to close the public hearing. We could leave it open on this item and vote to table for the next meeting, so I can make the changes.
Yeah, I would move that we table.
Second.
So moved. Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Mr. Joyce,
Yes.
Mr. Sands,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
and I don't see him, but Mr. Harrington.
Yes.
Okay,
I think that does it. Thank
And
you.
Larry Rizzo will also vote
Oh,
yes.
Larry, you're just falling off my
Sean,
window.
I'm developing a
radar.
complex over here.
okay, Mr. Chair, the next item is a text amendment for the keeping of animals. The applicant is Ann Harchin, Town Planner, on behalf of the Town of Guilford. This is a text amendment to clarify provisions for keeping of animals. I will present it, but then I have one caveat to ask you about. This text amendment essentially just strikes the clause within the keeping of animals section 6.1.d. The clause we're striking at the request of the health department is that animal keeping areas shall not be located directly over land containing an on-site sewage disposal system. The Director of Health says that is not required of the health department. I will say that Kevin McGee reached out and asked the commission to consider tabling the item to be referred to the Agricultural Commission. We did not, in fact, refer this to the Agricultural Commission, so they're taking this on themselves. Um,
And
But-
Ann and I just discussed this on Monday, and we're not sure why they have an interest in this text amendment, but we're tending towards ignoring that.
So the amendment is to have the health department not be involved with this aspect of it. Is that correct?
the amendment is to allow folks to keep animals over septic fields, essentially.
Right.
And being that the health department doesn't feel that it's in their purview to be
They don't feel that
notified
it's
or,
necessary, correct?
okay, all right. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So, this is just trying to, as we are trying to simplify this and to just not make it so cumbersome. And we're actually not sure why the Ag Society wants to get involved in this, but it seems there's no need.
I'll go along with you on that if you feel that way.
Yeah, I agree too. I mean, I think that if the health department says it's okay to graze animals on top of a septic field, then I don't see any reason why we should have this provision.
I'm gonna have to disagree. I'm just having a quick look through some now granted they're Google searches, so not perfect, but I'm seeing a lot of things saying like the weight of a cow will like compact a leaching field and make it less effective. I don't know if that's true with current leaching fields, but this doesn't apply only to current leaching fields. If you have an older leaching field, and now we can move our cows out there, and then that damages it, that potentially can cause issues. And I could easily see where, as far as which is the group that is looking this over?
The Agriculture Commission,
And what's their position on it?
they have no position except that they want you to table the item so that they can consider it at their next meeting.
That they may have more pertinent information to weight of whatever animals are being kept and the potential to damage a leaching field than the other offices. It doesn't really matter so much.
Yeah, I'm a little reluctant to say to another commission, well, we don't understand why you have an interest, and therefore you don't have an interest.
They're actually just.
If
they're not actually a commission. They're just.
They're a private nonprofit, the Agricultural Society.
Okay.
Right, not a commission.
The point is the same. If they were here at this public meeting, they would want to say something, but they want to have time, from my understanding, to consider so that at the next public meeting, they could say something if they want. So I'm reluctant to take a member of our extended community and say, well, we don't see why you have an issue, so don't say something. If they were here, they would say something.
I appreciate that, Larry. So I will entertain a motion to table.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, I'll withdraw.
I
Sean?
think Bill Freeman says, okay.
All right. Bill, you say yes.
I thought you were muted for a second, Sean. That's why I said that. Yeah, I
I'm
say yes.
sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. Mr. Harrington, yes?
Yes.
Larry Rizzolo.
Well, I think I'll say yes.
I gave you a chance. Phil Johnson.
I'll say yes, and I'll say I actually don't think we're going to be putting that many people out by tabling this for a month.
Yeah. And who am I missing? There's gotta be someone else. It's
Roger.
gotta be-
Roger said,
Roger.
Roger. Thank you.
You bet.
I'm just not seeing everybody, but at the same time, so I'm forgetting who's there.
And Ted.
Oh, Mr. Sands, I'm sorry. All right,
I'll vote yes.
thank you.
Sean, did you vote?
I vote yes.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a text amendment for building height. The applicant is Ann Harchin, Town Planner, on behalf of the Town of Guilford. This is a text amendment to clarify the definition of building height and to correct a hyperlink. So, this is literally a Scrivener's error and I guess a digital Scrivener's error as well. There is a section number that is incorrectly cited in the section 2.2 of building height. It used to say 2.3.C.4. It should say 2.3.E. And then because the document is a smart document, the hyperlink to that section is corrected digitally. Strange text amendment, but here we are.
All right,
So that it
and,
actually.
and before you go any further, you've got the keeping of animals still on the
Right.
screen.
Sorry about that. Let me bring up the other one. Okay, so you'll see here under proposed changes, just the section number change at the bottom, and then a correction to the actual hyperlink within the document so that it takes you to the correct section.
So instead of the C4 one, it's E.
Correct.
Instead of 2.3.C4, it's 2.3.8, yes.
Okay.
It seems pretty routine.
Mhm.
I make a motion, we accept that correction.
Second.
Open for discussion.
It's a public hearing, so we need to open it up for the public comment first.
All right, sorry.
If anybody would like to testify on this item, could you please raise your hand within the application? Again, if anybody would like to testify on building height text amendments, please raise your hand.
I see none.
I see none.
Unsurprisingly.
You could close the public hearing on this item, Mr. Chair.
I move that we close the public hearing.
Second,
Thank you. Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Mr. Joyce,
yes,
Mr. Harrington,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Rizzolo.
Why, certainly. Yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Sands.
yes.
And I'll also vote yes.
Would somebody like to make a motion to,
I will make a motion
Accept.
to accept the text amendment as presented.
Second to that.
Another vote.
Mhm.
Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Mr. Joyce,
yes.
Mr. Harrington.
Aye.
Thank you. Oh, that is so nice to hear. Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Rizzolo,
Yes.
and Mr. Sands.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Thank you.
thank you. The next item is a text amendment, zone name references. The applicant is Ann Harchin, Town Planner, on behalf of the Town of Guilford. This is a text amendment to correct zone name references. I will run you through the change and bring it up on the screen. We do have a request from Jim Sullivan that I forwarded to everybody to table this item. But let me run through the text first and then you can consider whether you would like to do that. Okay. Everybody see this text on the screen? Yes? Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
So this came up a couple months ago with an applicant. I have a lot of folks coming into my office asking me what they can do and where they can do it. I noticed that we had in the text a reference to the Service Business East District, which, as you may recall, no longer exists because it was absorbed into another district when the zoning regulations changed in October of 2023. And so this is my attempt to delete obsolete references and correct them to the new zones. In my opinion, this is a Scrivener's error. There are others like Jim Sullivan who do not believe it is a Scrivener's error, and thus he is requesting that the commission consider tabling the item until the next meeting.
If I understand some of his comments, one stuck out to me is the word "and." PRB2 and PRB3. So what does that mean? First, not all the PRB3s, I'm butchering it, but not all those zones are contiguous. So should it be read that within a contiguous zone, we only have one service station? So if we have three PBC zones, that each one could have a service station, if that's what we want. And are we aggregating zone 2 and zone 3 into one so that there's only one service station? So I think the word "and" is very ambiguous and can be interpreted a variety of ways.
If I may, Larry, this language, I looked at the previous section of the zoning ordinance 27322 where this same clause happens. And I agree with you that the word "and" is ambiguous, but it's carried directly forward from the previous ordinance. So it used to say, within the area encompassed by the following zoning districts, there shall be no more than one motor vehicle fuel sales facility, TS2 and PV2. And because the PV2 became the PRB2 and the TS2 became the PRB3, I believe that the intent was just to carry that language forward. I don't disagree with you that "and" as a modifier, there are two different ways of interpreting that.
Well, doesn't it make sense to try and sort that out now?
If you can tell me as a commission how you want that to read, I can go back and redraft it and we can correct that ambiguity.
Okay.
I don't believe that is and somebody else, once we take public testimony, I don't believe that's the objection that Mr. Sullivan has. I think his objection is more that no more than one motor vehicle fuel sales facility is allowed. But I don't want to speak for him. It was just a request. You saw the request in writing, and I will leave it at that.
Yeah, I think that is the essence of his objection.
But it is a public hearing item, so you probably do have public folks who would like to testify if you would like to consider that as well.
So
Before we do that, Ian, can I, for the benefit of the commission and the public, can you clarify who Jim Sullivan is?
Jim Sullivan is one of a group of siblings who are major landowners in the town. They own the parcels that were previously the Sullivan Farms on the far western edge of town approximate to the traffic circle now between Guilford and Branford on the Post Road.
Right, good. Thank you.
Yeah, I believe that they're part of the family, and I think Jim is on this call, that are part of the Sullivan family that owned an orchard and
Yeah.
off Route 1.
Yeah, that's right.
Up near where I live. I have to walk through one property to get to the Sullivan Orchard area by Route 1.
It was Newers, I believe. If Jim wants to correct me.
Well, so let's have some public comment.
Or not.
I just saw one raised. Two.
Chris, I see you have your hand raised.
Yep.
I do. For the record, I'm attorney Chris McKee, and I represent Jim Sullivan and Claire Sullivan and their entity, which owns the property on the west end of town, the Tractor Supply site, and all of the acreage behind and to the west of it is the parcel that they own, which is now within the PRB3 zoning designation, formerly the TS2 designation. And we, speaking for Jim and for Claire, I see Jim is on the call, but we have a couple of reasons for asking that this be tabled. The first is a practical reason, and that is that they are considering a project or looking into the feasibility of a project for which there is a meeting with the first selectman and Ms. Harchin 8 days from now, which might implicate more clarification to this particular regulation on a number of fronts. That project is the subject of a confidentiality and non-disclosure agreement, so I can't give you more information about that, but that is the practical reason we're asking that we put this down, because there may be clarifications that could help a project, assuming it is something that does go forward and has the ability to go forward. The more substantive reason to table it, and I didn't do a full-blown analysis of what existed before the regulation change and what the regulations now say, but I did note a couple of issues that I think ought to be better thought out, or thought out more thoroughly, not just the point that was made about use of the word "and," specifically the carryover from prior to the regulation change and now, and those concerns are many. In the prior regulations, the one that is cited in the application, which is 273-22D. These are of the 2018 regulations. It talks about within an area encompassed by certain zoning districts, there shall be one motor vehicle fuel sales facility. And elsewhere in the same regulations, the term is different, and it's referred to as motor vehicle refueling stations, and then in parentheses it says only in combination with convenience stores. I don't know whether those terms are the same and whether the regulation applies differently to a motor vehicle fuel sales facility or a refueling station with a convenience store. I also would note, and again, I didn't do a full-blown analysis here, but I would note that there's a statement that indicates that the PV2, the prior PV2 zone, is now, has become the PRB2, and that the TS2 has become the PRB3. And that's not exactly correct, because in the PRB2, there is an area that was formerly a commercial zone C-4W that was added to the PRB2. And in the what's now the PRB3, there's an area over near exit 59 on Boston Post Road, which is now also included in PRB3, which was not TS2, it was actually TS. So they're bigger areas and they're different areas. And I don't know that it has been fully thought out about what you want to do as a commission with respect to these refueling stations or these motor vehicle fuel sales facilities. So I think for a number of reasons, we're making a simple request that we table it. Number one, so we can have this meeting in 8 days to see if a project could go forward, which could bring about further important changes to this very section that might help it all of us understand it better, but also to further look into what exactly changing the definition here. And I totally agree that the term that service business east needs to be replaced. It is a technical error that has to be corrected, but why not take the opportunity to make these read better is my point.
Is there anybody else who would like to testify? Michelle, can you?
Yeah, hi,
introduce yourself?
Michelle Carlson, Executive Director, Land Development, BL Companies, Professional Engineer, Meriden, Connecticut. I had a question when you had the regulation up. You were asked, it said one service station, and I know a commissioner asked this question. Does it mean that if you just theoretically say at some point in time there's 3 PRB zones or not contiguous parcels, can there only be one station amongst all 3 of them, or can you have one station in each property that's in a PRB 2 or 3 zone? I don't think that's clear in the regulations, even when it's perfected with the language. So I think the commission should entertain making that clear also. That's it. That's all my comment is. I don't understand how many are allowed or not allowed and what the intent is.
Thank you, Michelle.
Is there anybody
you.
else who would like to testify? I don't see anybody else, Sean.
No, I don't see anybody else either. So do we have to make a motion to close public comment or not?
I think it's just a motion to table.
Yeah.
All right.
But also, if I may, if you could give me some direction as to what you would like me to pursue in the
Well,
meantime.
I think you have a meeting scheduled for next week, and you know what? I think we should hear from the applicant and from their advocates and reconsider their application after your meeting.
I would not advise changing an ordinance to meet the needs of an applicant. I think you have to legally separate the two issues. You as a commission need to decide what you want the regulation to read, and you can ask me to address that and clarify it. But I think it's inappropriate to say, let's talk to a developer and then we're going to decide what we're going to do with our regulations. That's
I don't think we're prepared to address the regulations tonight.
I have a question, Ann, about the contiguousness. That does seem odd since they are quite far away, right, from one another. So I think that would be something we would probably need to figure out how to write it up so that you could have one zone over here and one zone over there and have, is that basically what you're thinking?
You're saying, Bill, that the PRBs are very far apart.
Yeah, they're not contiguous, so we have to have some language that describes how it's a contiguous piece. Then it would be only one, and if another piece is over at the other exit, then it would be allowed to have. I mean, that's my my thinking. I don't know if everybody else agrees with that, but
Well, I mean, I think
language, excuse me, language might be that each PRB3 and each PRB2 zone may have one station. If that's
Right.
what.
So I'm sorry, each zone or each parcel within a zone? Like if they're
no,
not contiguous? I was trying to find the zoning map just to get a sense for exactly.
And
what
I
we're-
kind of have a sense of where they are in my head. I know they're not. I think what it
They're-
currently
they're-
is,
There are three
Is it-
PRB3 zones and maybe
Right.
two PRB2s.
Right.
I was looking at the map earlier.
Yeah, there aren't that
Okay.
many. There are only, I think there are, Ann could correct me, I
Yeah.
think there are two PRB2s and one PRB3? Or
No,
not?
three.
No, at least three.
Threes.
Okay.
but Phil brings up a good point, whether it's contiguous within the zone or just zones that are separated.
Yeah, that's why.
I was understanding it was zones that were separated and that each zone in its own right could only have one.
Hmm.
May I
I
ask
don't
a
know.
question, gentlemen? Does anybody recall the nature of the discussions that were had regarding this regulation and the word "and"? Because
No.
I can't find anything on the record.
No.
I don't think Ann was ever even
I
part of
wasn't
it.
here. Yeah.
No.
And I would,
My language-
I would hazard a guess that Glenn would not even remember.
Yeah, he doesn't.
Right.
Well, I have a question. You know, the regulation says motor vehicle refueling. Does that include electric vehicle charging?
So charging and refueling are different things.
The regulation says motor vehicle fuel sales facility. So we'd have to double check the definitions, which I can also do quickly if you give me a minute.
But that's an excellent point, Ted.
Yeah, I think fuel is specific to like gasoline, diesel, things like that.
Yeah.
So to clarify my proposed language, it would be that each of the three PRB3 zones in each of the two PRB2 zones may have one fueling station.
There's 4 PRB.
I would
If
disagree. I
that's
mean,
what- if that's what we intend, right?
I don't think that. I mean, if you look at the PRB2s, do you really want gas stations on either side of that? If you look at PRB3s, they're very far apart. And I agree that, but I mean, do we really want a lot more gas stations? I mean, if
Well-
in fact an applicant felt like there was some type of a hardship and they wanted to bring some type of a special permit or something, they can come back to us. But I don't think we really want to encourage, you know, because if in fact we add another district, we can add another gas station, and you know, if you add areas onto this, I think it would cause quite a bit of concern.
I think that's the heart of the question that I would ask as well, Phil, is it the intention that each chunk can have a each chunk of PRB3 or the other one, the PRB2 that we're referencing can have a gas station, or is it in total?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only one is allowed. So maybe it's something that you all think about, and we come, think about it for a month, and we all come back and I can try to draft something, draft the different variations that are conceivable. I can't get this to stop sharing. And then we could review it again if that's helpful.
Okay.
I hate to ask this, but can you pull it back up? I just wanted to point
Want
something out.
the map or the regulations?
The zoning map.
Okay, so this map is the map that Glenn did to show the changes between the old regulations and the new.
Okay.
Okay, let me bring that back up. Hold on.
I'm just going to ask you to zoom in around the exit 57 area when you can.
Okay, hold on. Okay, so you've got light blue, which is PV2 to PRB2. Then you have this rust color, which is C4W to PRB2.
Yep. And so the,
This blue that we just changed a couple months ago to shopping center, and then the shopping center that exists now.
so I just want to make a point of right around where Route 1 crosses 95 at 57 there, that's PRB2 on both sides of it now. And how contiguous is that as it comes to a single point? Because it's only the area that's there. So that's the thing that should be considered when we're looking at what is a contiguous lump of PRB2 or not. Just food for thought.
So Bob, what you're really talking about is having some continuity.
Or
Right.
deciding whether or not that counts as continuous. Because it comes down to, you know, it crosses over. Does that count as continuous? That is also somewhat ambiguous.
Yeah.
But I agree with taking some time to think about this and make sure we understand it before we're trying to figure
Yeah,
out.
I do too. And any distinction between PRB 2 and 3 is probably important too.
And I will also point out that I am saying we need to think about it because I haven't had the chance to do a deep think about this, but just because it's coinciding with the fact that we're tabling it and the Sullivans are asking us to table it, are also coincidental and have nothing to do with each other. I'm not comfortable with making a decision about one way or the other, just looking at all the ambiguities, and we should look at that. And as you said, we shouldn't be considering a developer's wants for what should be right for the districts and all that.
Get those comments. Any other comments?
I think it would be helpful to map where the existing gas stations are along, and which of these zones already have gas stations, maybe have 2 gas stations.
Maybe
Are there gas stations outside of those zones? It'd be useful, I think, to have a map of where the existing gas stations are imposed on our zoning map.
PRB3 on Route 1 has at least 4 that I can think. 5.
Yeah. 4 or 5.
Four or five.
5.
And that's assuming that the Trabs on the corner is not included.
Yeah, but
Whatever. I mean,
but, you know, you have gas stations on Route 80, and you know, you go farther up into North Guilford. I mean, none of these are in those kind of districts.
Oh, I see Chris.
Yeah, I think we're still in the public hearing, right? I don't think it's been closed, but I did want to point out 2 things. One is there's another regulation which you probably know that prohibits gas stations from being located within 1,500 feet of each other. That is a separate requirement, and I would point out that the 2 regulations, if we're using the and we're using the PRB2 and PRB3, it could be read to say that you can only get a special exception for a refueling station if there isn't already a gas station in PRB2 or PRB3, which essentially means that nobody could ever make a special exception under either of those 2 zones, because there already are gas stations in PRB2 and PRB3.
Right.
So these regulations effectively are meaningless, I think, if they're read in that way, which they could be. And I'm not sure that's your intention. But I think that's what needs to be looked into further.
I think your points are well taken, and I think that this is well advised to be tabled.
Make a motion to table? Or do we have to close the public comment first?
Don't close the public hearing because then you'll have to
No, yeah,
reopen.
I was just
Right.
public comment. So I'd like to
Second.
make a motion to table this. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Do I hear a vote from Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Mr. Joyce,
Yes.
Mr. Harrington?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Sands,
Yes.
Mr. Rizzolo,
Larry, you're on mute, just so you know.
So,
Yes.
and Mr. Johnson.
yes,
Thank you. And I will vote yes.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is text amendment for special permits. The applicant is Ann Harchin, town planner on behalf of the town of Guilford. This is a text amendment to clarify language as applicable to special permit modifications. Grab that. Let me bring this up for you to look at. Give me a second here. Okay, so in section 9.4.g currently, you may receive an amendment or a modification to an existing special permit. And under this clause, anybody who's coming back does not have to apply via a public hearing item. We could take it under other items or site plan review. I've heard from the commission at past meetings that this may have been an unintended edit to the text and that we really should encourage for items that went through a public hearing process, i.e. special permits previously and that are getting modified, that it really is an important element of those modifications to have public hearing and thus public input.
So the question I have is, do we have experience with how major or minor these requests are? And whether it should require another?
yeah, I mean, are the changes that are we basically put the de minimis definition onto town staff
Right.
as opposed to,
Right.
any alteration whatsoever on the plan that was presented to us would need to go back for another public hearing. So
Yeah.
The
So,
only
Phil-
instance of this happening since these new regulations have been in effect is the modification you heard previously for the Dunkin' Donuts Frank DeAndrea's property at 1486 Boston Post Road. That phased modification plan did not require a public hearing and was heard as a site plan review. He has a similar site plan review on the agenda tonight for another modification. But in the past 16 to 18 months, those are the only two instances where this section of the ordinance has been in effect. And they essentially get a free pass and can skip the public hearing component.
So Ann, would you expect this to come up infrequently in the future? And is this important that we address it tonight?
My non-lawyer opinion is that as time goes on, you, the commission, are setting precedent for how you treat applicants in the future. I've heard from some that they were really uncomfortable with things that were approved under special permits not having to come back for a public hearing. I think it is an important distinction that you definitively decide one way or another. Either keep the regulation as it stands, where a modification would not require a public hearing, or change it. But I think it's a good discussion to have tonight and to make a decision. Now, we could table it again if you want to think about it.
So I would like to hear from the commissioners.
Well, unfortunately, I don't think there's a definition for, what's a minor change and what's not a minor change. And I think we kind of put ourselves in town staff in a kind of a tricky position because, what's a minor change to me on something across town might not be so minor to an abutting neighbor. And again, I think it puts town staff in an awkward spot of having to define, and this doesn't even say minor, it just changes, right?
Minor nature,
It says minor of a minor nature.
or which do not materially alter the special permit.
Right.
But it says as determined by the commission.
Right.
So this goes to minor and major, and if there is any change, should it come back to the commission? That's the question.
Well, any changes should come back to the commission. Whether it's a public hearing or an item or not is a different.
So
different
are we
So there
trying to
are-
determine?
If I may, just very quickly, there are three essentially levels of approval. If I could be so blunt, there's special permits which require public hearing, and thus, on the record, the public can testify. We have the regular site plan approvals, which are not public hearing items. So the commission, here's an application and can make a decision without public input. And then there are administrative approvals, which are allowed. I tend, in terms of judgment, because of the number of times I personally have been sued as staff for a commission, I tend to be very conservative about what I now am willing to sign off on administratively. It has to be very minor to do so. Otherwise, I do push people to come in for either site plan or special permit as appropriate for modifications.
So
Marjorie does have her hand up, but we haven't gotten to the public hearing part yet.
I have a question. So right now, none of them, minor or major, are required public hearings. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so the question is, putting minor or major aside, do we want to instead have it all go to anything that you assume is major, which is a pretty, it's pretty, you push that way in general anyways, then those would go to public hearings, all of those. Is that what the real crux of the decision here is?
This text change does include the word "to be of a minor nature of which do not materially alter the special permit," but all of those would be new public hearing items. So this doesn't foreclose my ability to sign off on something administratively, but what it does foreclose is essentially major changes or minor changes, which now currently aren't a public hearing item, would become a public hearing item. I don't know if I just confused the issue.
I completely understood.
Okay. One of the questions I have is, could we responsibly leave it within the purview of the town planner, not necessarily Ann, but the town planner, to determine whether we characterize
Whether it's a minor change or not.
minor or major, that
Or just
that
not
she,
minor.
that she determines that it is of a consequence that it should come back before the commission
Well, so my,
and require a public hearing.
so my understanding currently is, no matter what, it has to come back before us. And currently, the way
Correct.
the statute is, we can say, no, this isn't actually minor, it has to be a public hearing, and then we can make it a public hearing, correct?
No, it's the opposite way. It defaults to no
Right.
public hearing.
But we could,
Technically, you're supposed to approve it before that decision's made, but we haven't in the run of the mill of how we are accepting applications, we haven't been doing it that way.
Yeah.
because I think what makes sense to me, and I don't know if this is the thing that we can do. I hesitate to say everything has to come back to a public hearing, no matter how minor it is, which is what this change looks like to me. What I'd like to see is something explicitly stating, something has to come back to us, and we have the option to say, no, this really isn't minor. Someone could see this as a big deal. There should be a public hearing. Somebody, people need to be heard. Like, we know that a lot of people spoke on this issue previously. They're doing a minor change. People are going to want to hear about it. So that's fine. Or we know that no one cared about this thing and it's a minor change and we see it as a minor change. So we're not going to delay them another month to get a public hearing. I think that should fall on the committee, since it would be coming to the committee anyways for a change to decide whether it's minor or major.
So if there's, just so I got this right, so if there's a minor change, we're gonna ask them to come to the Planning and Zoning Commission to explain the minor change, right? And we'll determine whether or not it's a public hearing item or not. Again, we've cut the number of meetings that we have in half, so we're, again, really, in my opinion, imposing upon, developers who are trying to get things done on what is perceived to be a minor change. And we can leave that minor change at the opinion and discretion of the town planner. At the sole discretion of the town planner. I mean, if you're not comfortable, you don't think it's minor, bring it to us. If you're comfortable and you think it's minor, then it's on, that's within your authority that we had previously granted.
And are we as a commission able to say we want a public hearing as per what Bob is saying?
I do not know that I have found specific language that grants you the permission to make anything a public hearing. We could, instead of making this change, we could make that change and say any application that the Planning and Zoning Commission considers appropriate can be made a public hearing item, or anything that the public requests a public hearing item can be made a public hearing item with a vote of the commission, or something to that effect.
Right.
New Haven has a clause like that. And that might circumvent the need well, again, then it's an action by the commission to vote to make a public hearing, as opposed to this proposed change, which would default to the public hearing. So,
Right, and I'm in
There's a-
I'm in favor of that based on what Phil is saying, is that we don't want to continue to
Well,
drag people through.
As opposed to that, maybe we, sorry to do this to you, Sean. Maybe we say, if in the opinion of the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission, that the change is not minor, it will come before, as opposed to us having to have a meeting to discuss it. We can just,
Well, I think those are
Those-
separate things. I think what Anne has is almost 3 levels. She has the I can sign off on it, the minor and the major. And then we need to be able to, as a board, have a discussion about this and say, wow, this is really not, as Bob said, there was a lot of public talk before, blah, blah, blah. We take a vote as a commission and decide if we want to make it into a public hearing.
Yeah,
But
no.
it should be defaulted as not a
Yeah,
public.
so that then is-
but let me just say something. I think that just adds to the agenda of every meeting. What I would suggest is that, as every chairman has probably done for quite a long time, has met with the town planner prior to every Planning and Zoning Commission meeting and discuss the items on the agenda. And if in my capacity, if I met with Ann and we looked at something and said, this is, in our opinion, our studied opinion, minor, let's leave it off. If it's more than minor, let's make it a public hearing.
Okay,
No,
if I may though,
No,
can I just interject something there because, and I hate to, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but this is important. That may be a good idea, Sean. The problem that arises is that we have those meetings, say, 2 days before the meeting.
The applicant,
Public hearing items have to be noticed properly, and that takes
Exactly.
literally 3 weeks before
Yep.
the hearing to actually get that notice done correctly and in the paper.
in fairness to the applicant, right?
So that would actually add more time. Now, let me propose this. We can hear from those in the public who want to testify on this item, and then you guys could we could table again, and you guys can give me direction on refinement here. I'm not hearing consensus, but whatever you'd like.
I think consensus is difficult because I think we're all sort of coming at it with different understandings of what we're trying to consensus on.
Right. I don't hear any consensus.
I think the concern of having too many, the agenda being filled up. What Ann has said is like I think Bill, you were saying there's the three levels. So there's the level that Ann's basically comfortable with, which is below minor. It's administrative. It doesn't matter. Then there's minor, and that's where you get into the gray area. And Ann has already said that she's concerned, and she's very conservative there because she's been sued. So she's going to send a lot of that stuff to us, as she should, for her own safety. And then and right now with this change, that's automatically going to become a public hearing, and it's going to be added to the agenda with the change as it's stated here. But if we make it so that it'll come to us, we can say, yes, that's minor, we can approve it, it'll move on. Or we could say, no, that's not minor, it needs a public hearing. The majority of them, it's just going to be a small part of the agenda. We'll go, yep, no, that's minor, let it go on, it can be approved, it'll be quick. And if it needs more attention, we can say this needs more attention. And I think that'll be the smallest amount of what happens and give us the best outcome for everybody involved. People who are interested, it'll keep our agenda as clear as possible.
I'm trying to game this out. If we're having a meeting to decide whether we need to have a public hearing, then it goes to the next meeting. So the person trying to get their project done, we've just now added a month plus whatever expense that entails.
2 months.
Right.
2 months.
So if we just have the public hearing straight off and it's minor, it'll just go through quickly. And if it's major, there'll be a lot of discussion and maybe another meeting will be warranted. But my goal is to try to keep as few meetings as possible to help the developer.
Larry, I think you just hit the nail on the head. And I think as we look back, those of us who are here for the rewriting of the zoning code, I think, we may not have accomplished it in perfect form, and we certainly didn't, but our watchword was to try to make reading the code and navigating through the process easier. And that's still my watchword. I'm still trying to figure out how to make it easier for the public to navigate through this commission and through, Ann's office.
I'm going to say that Larry's convinced me. I think this change makes sense because it does seem to me like it'll be less meetings for everybody involved, even though it'll be slightly more longer sections for it. I think this makes sense based on what Larry is saying.
So I'll just say, Bob, thank you for that. If our meetings are a little bit longer, but the public's interaction, required interaction with you know, Ann's office in our commission is lessened, I'm all for that.
I would suggest that we open for public comment, because someone did have a comment, right, Ann?
Yes, Marjorie had her hand raised, but she took it down. Would anybody in the audience like to comment on this text amendment? Marjorie, you have your hand up again, so go for it.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Marjorie Shansky. I am not here to testify on this part of your meeting, but my client has been invoked, and of course, as a student of zoning, I'm interested in everything about it. And the conversation has been really substantive and interesting. And I do think that it devolves into these sort of three elements. There's one element that hasn't been raised, and that is the extent to which a modification may have nothing to do with the use that is the basis of the special exception itself, and may be only site plan oriented, and that might be examined or analyzed or determined through this major minor description that you may be refining for your regulations. My overarching comment is that leaving this on the table seems to be the appropriate thing to do, because that way you can both economize and identify the way to deal with it that is both applicant friendly and commission efficient, or applicant efficient and commissioner friendly, whichever you think is more important. I will say that when one files an application, if there is a public hearing, if you wanted to punt to the automatic public hearing position, a commission has 65 days to schedule it. So you're not really necessarily just adding a month to the process. And part of that's going to be based on how busy you are with other things at the time and the space that you have on your agenda. So I think that this bears some reflection. Again, not on behalf of my client, but because it's a really important distinction. And by the way, site plans, a commission always has the discretion to hold a public hearing on a site plan. So you're not giving up any power that you have by not having the automatic position that it goes to public hearing. You can always make the public hearing, and there may actually, at least theoretically, be more efficiency associated with it coming to you in February and you hearing it in March, then filing it in January and waiting 65 days to be heard. I mean, may it be at the end of the day, it's the same, but maybe the punt position isn't public hearing, because you always have the authority, whether it's a special exception or a site plan, to request a public hearing. So I think it's a great conversation, and I urge you to reflect on it. And if you do table it, I'll probably write to you about it on nobody's behalf other than, you know, somebody who thinks about this stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
If anybody else would like to testify, please raise your hand.
I hear none.
So you need to decide if you want to keep the hearing open and table, or close the hearing and vote.
Make a motion to table, to continue to table.
I'll second that motion.
All right. We will go to vote. Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
Mr. Joyce.
Yes.
Mr. Harrington.
Yes.
Mr. Rizzolo.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Sands.
Yes.
I will vote yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I may, is there specific homework on this issue that you would like me to do, or are we tabling so you, as a commission, can just think about it for a while?
Ready? Yes.
Oh, if I could,
I
punt
think
this-
based
if I
on what
could punt
Marjorie
this to
said.
you, Ann, I would, but you know, I can certainly talk to the commissioners ex parte and, you know, give some feedback, but I think this is this really goes to the heart of one of the things that animated our discussions around the rewriting of the code, which is to, you know, if we could at all possible streamline the process for applicants. And so I think it's, yes, anything you can do to help us. Please.
So
Okay, I'll have
can
to
I-
think
can I
about
ask-
that one.
can I ask a question? If, what are the rules governing commissioners having discussions between meetings?
You should not be having discussions between meetings. So anything you want to discuss, we should discuss on the record now or at
So-
the next meeting.
All
Or
right.
what we're
I
Do
asking,
not meet
I just-
among yourselves.
All
No.
right.
so
I
what
just said
that-
no.
right, so what we're asking us to do is each as individuals think and contemplate this issue so that we can engage in a discussion at the next meeting. That's the plan going forward.
Unless there's specific homework or wording you want me to, if you want me to do research, if you want me to write a memo, like the other ones, I'm going to give you a map of where all the gas stations are. That's homework for me. This one for me feels like you all understand the issue. Now you just have to kind of decide where you land on it. I don't feel like there's a lot of homework to be done here.
And I
But
think
correct me if
Marjorie's,
I'm wrong. Yeah.
I think Marjorie's comments about being able to have a public hearing were very helpful.
So that's the case. At any point in time, we could make a motion to make something a public hearing, anything.
Site plan or special permit. I think special permit is always public, but so for example, when the Stone House was originally flipped from being a restaurant to a laboratory, that was a site plan revision that went to public hearing.
The delta there is that we generally try to get applications through in, the first 30, 35 days. And we could codify, I think we very explicitly, if your desire is to have, though you already have the ability, but I think we should codify this ability to bump a site plan up to a special hearing. The only caveat there that I said before, but I'll be a little repetitive, is that if we get an application, it comes in as a site plan review, and then you guys decide at that meeting, gosh, we want this to be a public hearing item, we do add another month to the process. And granted, yes, by statute, we have a lot of time. But that's just what's going to happen, just because of the noticing requirements.
So the question I have is, this change that we're looking at here, though, isn't about a special permit. It's about an amendment to a special permit.
Yes.
So the special permit has already been approved. Is the amendment something that we already have the power to make a public hearing?
If we believe it's to be significant enough and with enough public interest, sure.
I mean, if that's the case, then
I just leave it the way it is. But
yeah, if that's the case, then it doesn't matter. We just have to make sure that any commission at any point in time is explicitly aware of the ability to do that. So that way we don't, hang up our hands and go, well, we can't do anything about this because it's an amendment. We have to be made aware every time that we don't have to just go, oh yeah, whatever.
Yeah. I'll do a little homework. I'll have to think about my homework, but I would just encourage everybody to think independently about this. And if you want to come talk to me, you can do that, but I would strongly advise against talking among yourselves, either in person, online, on the phone, or digitally.
yeah, I don't
Well, we
even talk
can
to Phil when
communicate with
I
you.
see him at Paddle. I just look the other way.
I hit one at you.
And Did you just say we could communicate with you?
Yeah, if you want to
Oh.
speak in a theoretical universe about this, yeah, I can talk to you.
Yeah, I think all of us should
And-
schedule an hour with Ann this week. Next week.
And, and
Call the
one
cops
last,
on you, Freeman.
one last question. The way this is written right now, if we're going to require a public hearing, it's a special permit. Are we requiring neighbors to be noticed?
All special permits require neighbor notification.
So as this is currently written, your current revision,
Yes.
you would have to have a public hearing and neighbors would have to be noticed.
So neighbors are noticed. There are all kinds
Almost.
of notice requirements for special permits depending on what type of special permit it is. Even if it's within 500 feet of another municipality, we have to do additional notification.
It's
Yeah, this is
right.
all spelled out in the ordinance itself. But yes, this is a way, if you made this a required special permit, a modification, the applicants would be required to renotice all the neighbors. So that is enhancing, if you will, the public involvement, because folks don't have to be looking at the agendas of the Planning and Zoning Commission. They're actually going to get a letter.
Mhm.
Maybe neither here nor there, but it's another level of notification.
So I think we decided we're going to table this. Is that correct?
Yep.
We
So I'll
didn't
make a
vote
motion
yet.
that I'll make a motion that we table it unless we did already and I forgot. Second.
I thought we already voted on
I
this.
thought
I
we
thought
did.
I already made one, but that's okay.
I
Yeah,
can't remember.
We did. I had
Okay.
asked afterwards what my homework was, so we're good. Okay,
I can't.
moving on.
Let's move on to solar panels.
Okay, the next item is the text amendment for solar panels. Applicant is Ann Harchin, town planner on behalf of the town of Guilford. This is a text amendment to clarify the provisions for solar panels in the Guilford Green and all other districts. This one's a little complicated, so let me bring it up first before I talk about it.
Yeah, and this item came up at my SCROG meeting last month. There was a concern expressed that Guilford was somehow restricting or unfairly restricting solar panels around the historic district.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, can I move this up? Yeah. Okay. So there's currently, can you see my screen now?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yep.
And the print is, for my eyesight, the print is really
Too
small.
small. Okay, let me try to make it a little bigger for you. My screen's very small, so
If you have you do page width if you can.
yeah. Okay. Is that a little better?
That's a little better.
We're trying to go bigger.
My-
Okay.
that's better. Thank you.
Okay. So 8.1.b, there language that certain solar panel installations are allowed by zoning permit, but other sections such as 4.1.c.2.d conflict with that language. And so this is an attempt at a clarification so that we don't have one section of the ordinance saying you can do this by zoning permit, and another section of the ordinance saying you need a special exception from the commission. So the discussion here, I'll just read this. While a special permit should be required, and this is you can decide otherwise. But because it was intimated in the ordinance, I made this inference that a special permit should be required in the Guilford Green District. Since it is a village district, it's more tightly controlled by us and by the HDC. And when a solar installation is the principal use of the property, So just no principal residence, just something like a solar, ground-mounted solar array all by itself.
Okay.
We're thinking that that should remain be made a special permit, but each section is a little bit different. So let's go through the proposed changes. So 8.1.B.1 for roof-mounted solar arrays that are accessory to a principal use. We're saying we keep that as a zoning permit, except for the Guilford Green District. Similarly to wall-mounted solar arrays, which are accessory to a principal use.
What is the rationale behind except the Guilford Green District?
Well, this is an inference from other places in the ordinance.
Does it, I mean, it tangentially references, it just reminds me of the historic district. I mean, it doesn't
Yes.
reference historic district, but it says Guilford Green District.
Right. Two different districts. One is a zoning district designated on your zoning maps. And then on top of that, there's also the historic district managed and regulated by the HDC. So this is, and this happens in a lot of districts where you have multiple regulatory entities with essentially a zoning layer that are slightly duplicative of each other. And then the fun is always to figure out what's the most restrictive situation and who gets to go first.
Well, I mean, and who actually has authority?
Well, this isn't, in this situation, let's just say, you say, for the first one, roof-mounted solar arrays that are accessory uses, we can do as a zoning permit. So what happens now is that, and say it's also in the historic district. So say it's under both the Guilford Green District and it's in the historic district. So what technically happens now when an applicant would come in under that scenario is we immediately refer them to the HDC for the HDC to make a decision about whether they, the HDC, are going to allow the solar array. And then they would have, well, now, if they get sign off for the HDC, then we just review it under the zoning permit and say, okay, you're good. And as long as they're within our parameters here, A, B, C, and D, we can sign off on the zoning permit. What this proposed change is, whether you want to make it or not, is that if it's in the Guilford Green District, they would have to go to the HDC and they would have to come to you for a special permit. That may be too much. The two districts are not completely contiguous. They don't completely overlap. So there are places that are in the historic district that are not in the Guilford Green, and I believe the other way, but I would have to do a little research on that. So the point is you can't exactly swap one out for the other.
Yeah. We could remove one.
Well, you could remove all of this and say all of these are allowed via zoning permit. Let me just see where the other changes are. Solar, wind, energy systems in the Guilford Green. Yeah. See, it's
wind is a different story. I mean, you know, I'm not sure if any other commissioners, and I'll wait for comment, but any of the commissioners have experience with or know people who have been near wind projects, but they can be problematic depending upon their size. And so that would be one. I just don't think we should put any restrictions on solar. I just think that's
I think so some restrictions on solar is not a terrible thing. The thing that I'm thinking of, which makes it not a terrible thing, is for the historic district, for the Guilford Green district, where I know we're trying to maintain that historic feel that Guilford has, which is, beautiful and fantastic. You don't want somebody slapping an ugly, boxy, nasty solar panel right on top of that, and then it looks terrible and it's hideous. And yes, it's fantastic for the solar power. I love it. But, and I don't want to explicitly say a specific brand, but there are solar panels that can be designed to look like an historic slate roof.
there's Bob, just to interrupt. There is a house which I've known my entire life on the corner of Broad Street and Fair Street
Yeah.
that put shingles on their roof that are solar shingles.
And
And
do
that's
you know
exactly
what?
what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but do you know what the delta difference, the cost?
Yeah, there you go.
Between standard panels and blank roof tiles?
Oh yes, no, there's a big difference. But
I mean, we're talking like 5x.
yes, absolutely.
So I think that's, I'm not sure I even want to go down the road discussing if you're going to be in the district.
What I'm trying to get at is you've got the Guilford Green District and the Historic District. And the Historic District, whether it's a committee or, they're the fashion police. That they don't allow a lot of stuff that, in my opinion, we should not be putting further restrictions on.
Yeah, given the current situation with climate change and things, and whether you believe it or not, I think we should be doing everything in our power to help people offset their costs for various things, and one of them would be solar panels. And I don't think they should be restricted anywhere personally, but that's because I'm in that camp.
So if I understand, if we strike this proposed language, strike the exception language, then there's still someone that can override us, right?
Well, the HCC,
So we should make this as least restrictive as possible by permit. And if Historic Commission says, we won't allow that because it changes the character of the historic nature of the district, well, then that's their decision. We can't do anything about that. But at least we can make our regulation be as permissive as possible.
I agree with Larry on that. I mean, I think that I've heard the same thing, that Guilford is hostile to solar. And I remember I had a discussion with a potential solar installer, and he said he didn't want to have anything to do with Guilford. He said, you're too close to the green. He said, we'll litigate this for 10 years and you won't get the solar panel.
And that would still be the historic district causing that, and it wouldn't have anything to do necessarily with the Planning and Zoning Commission.
No, but I personally don't see any reason why we, as the Planning and Zoning Commission, should be restricting this stuff.
I agree.
Likewise.
do we want to
I
take
don't know.
comments from the public?
Oh, go ahead.
Sure.
Is there anybody from the public that would like to testify on this item?
I see no hands.
I see no hands. Yeah, so you could, at this point, you could close the public meeting and vote on the proposed change. You could close the public hearing and ask me to remove the special permits from any solar permits. Or you could table the item, let me revise it to remove the special permits, and then you look at a clean copy next month and vote on it.
I vote for number 2.
B.
B.
Let's
you.
get something accomplished tonight instead of tabling
Yes.
everything and putting it off.
Okay,
Hey, we accomplished one right off the bat. We did do one.
Yeah.
All right,
Uh,
So I'm gonna go with
let's-
B.
Let's rephrase B before we vote on.
first, if you're going with B, you should first close the public
Close.
hearing.
it. All right.
Move to close.
I'll second.
Second?
Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Mr. Joyce,
Yes.
Mr. Harrington,
Yes.
Mr. Rizzolo,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Sands,
Yes,
and I will vote yes.
Now we can make a motion to accept Plan B
Yes.
that was presented to us
Which
and
is,
is on the record
and goes
and
back,
recorded.
Can we
Does-
restate Plan B?
does some modifications and comes back with a clean copy that we can look at.
No, that was Plan C.
No,
That
That's
was
C.
Plan B was the commission directs me to make all solar related approvals via zoning permit and eliminate the special permit requirements for 8.1, section 8.1.b.
so
Like
I
moved.
that.
agree with that.
Yeah, I like that.
Good by
So
me.
moved.
All right, so moved. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I think technically one of us has to make the motion, not just,
I know. I was like,
I hate to throw Roberts out there, but, and set somebody up, so.
I think the motion has been moved
Okay.
to adopt Plan B, as it will be known. Mr. Freeman,
yes.
Mr. Joyce,
Yes.
Mr. Harrington,
I'm gonna say that Ted convinced me and say yes.
he's a very convincing guy.
Yeah.
Mr. Rizzolo,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Sands,
Yes,
and I'll vote yes.
A victory.
Excellent.
Turning the page on the agenda.
Yeah.
The next item is a text amendment, the list of collector streets and state highways. The applicant is Ann Harchin, town planner, on behalf of the town of Guilford. This is a text amendment to clarify the definition of road types. I will ask you to table this item because Janice and I have not, she wanted some additional recommended changes. We have not had the time to sit down and discuss those changes. So I would like the opportunity to adjust this text amendment for you to vote on next time, but I would like to request that this item be tabled.
I
Like
will
to make a motion to table?
Second.
For our next meeting.
Let's take a vote. Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Mr. Joyce,
Yes.
Mr. Harrington,
Aye.
I like you. Mr. Rizzolo,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Sands.
whack.
I'll vote yes.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is text amendment EV charging. The applicant is Ann Harchin, town planner, on behalf of the town of Guilford. Text amendment to clarify provisions for EV charging. Let me bring this up for your. I will adjust the size in just a moment. Give me a second here.
Yeah, it's a little small.
Oh,
There you go. That's great.
Okay, this text amendment, there is there are two sections which seem to slightly contradict each other. Section 7.3.E.5 encourages the consideration of EV charging, but section 7.3.G.3.b requires EV chargers in certain situations. So we would love to get rid of the former's ambiguity by striking 7.3.E.5 and letting 7.3.G stand on its own, where all level charges are permitted via special permit. And what else? What other changes? That is really the only change. It's striking 7.3.E.5, which read, just for the record, in the design and construction of parking areas, consideration should be given to the installation of electric vehicle charging stations, either for immediate use in the near term or through the installation of underground conduits and other preparations for use in the long term. I think we want to be a little more definitive than that, and so that's why we are recommending this change.
So it will be required.
Can you
It will be re- it will
clarify?
be re-
Can you
Yep.
clarify section little b?
Little b,
Yes.
let me find little b.
You just went past it.
I went just past little b. In
7.3.
7.3, yeah.
Mhm.
In all districts, level 2 EVS capable charging stations meeting or exceeding 10% of all new parking spaces are required as part of new construction, expansion of parking areas, and or significant change in use, which will result in the addition of 30 or more parking spaces. That is, I believe, state statute at this point.
Yeah,
So
and
the difference between,
I can't think of any space in Guilford yet unless the area across from the rock pile is developed that will require that. I can't.
30 or more spaces within Guilford is a large project.
Exactly.
And we
Yeah.
haven't seen any of those in since I've been here.
And it appears the strike language up above in E.5 is the same. It's repeated down below in that box, the shaded box, if I'm reading that correctly. And if so, should that not be deleted as well?
You are correct.
I was wondering,
Okay.
Yes.
for my clarification, just a quick question to make sure I understand this. So level 1 is 120 volts, level 2 is 240 volts, and level 3 is DC charging, correct? Which is considered
Yes.
like, yes,
It's the
That's
fast,
fast charge.
it's the
it's a
fast
fast
charge.
charge.
Yeah.
It concerns me that that is simply allowed as accessory to a residential dwelling, because those are major undertakings. Is there something else that controls that to make sure that somebody just isn't trying to put them in on their own? Because that's
Well, I don't think anybody's putting in like a level 3 supercharger. I mean, that's,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't
where are
think-
you going to pull the power for that?
I was about to say those are 250 watts.
yeah, no, they're crazy. But my point is that, like, if it's simply allowed, level 3 should always be somebody has to look at that, in my opinion. Just looking at that, that's
Yeah, I mean, if I may, the building department would definitely be looking at this because they have to pull a building permit too, but yeah,
okay. As long as there's something else looking at it, I just want to make sure.
I think on a practical basis, I can't imagine that ever happening.
Yeah, but Bob, your concern is basically public safety.
Yes. Yes.
So, oh, I'm sorry, Bob. So, just for history, did we require of Chase Bank that they put in the provision for charging stations, or did they just do that of their own volition?
That was
I
part of
don't
their It was part of their applications, I remember it.
Yeah, I
because they
wasn't
just,
here when that was approved, so I can do research, but I can't tell you off the top of my head.
yeah, I'm just trying to recall if that was required and that's why they put it in their application, or if they were just being good citizens and putting it in.
It wasn't required.
Okay, thank you.
Well, yeah, in other words, they just put it in, so it never came up
Yeah.
as like you're required to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But also there are many state grants right now which will pay for commercial entities to install electric vehicle charging. So they may have actually, not have been required to do it, but we're like, okay, we can get this grant. Why don't we do it anyways?
And it looks good
Yeah.
to have them.
Yeah, for goodwill.
Mhm.
Right.
Okay.
I like them.
Do we want to open this one up for the public?
Sure.
Sure, let's ask any attendees online whether they'd like to make any comment. And I see none.
Is there anybody who would like to testify on this item? If so, raise your hand.
For or against? See none. I think we're on to, oh boy, major, minor.
No. We
Oh,
need
no,
to
we have to decide this.
close
we
the
have to
public
decide.
meeting and
Right.
decide on this item.
Okay,
I move to close the public hearing.
thank you, Ted.
I'll second.
So, Mr. Freeman? Yes. I assume yes. Mr. Joyce?
Yes.
Mr. Harrington?
Yes.
Mr. Rizzolo?
Yes.
Mr. Sands?
Yes.
And Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
And I will vote yes.
Do we have a motion on this item?
I'll move to make the changes as listed, including the removing of the shaded in box. That was noted by, I think Larry noticed that, or who noticed that?
I think Roger might have.
Oh,
Roger.
Roger did. Sorry, Roger.
Not at all.
Oh, don't fall over each other this second. So,
Yeah, I didn't suggest it, Bob, but I will second.
okay, all right. And I'm going to go in order again. Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Mr. Joyce,
Yes.
Mr. Harrington,
A variety C.
Hello,
Yes.
Mr. Sands,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. Thank you.
Down to one.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I will read the next item, but I will preface it by saying I made a mistake in the agenda and you'll recognize it immediately. So I'd like to have this item tabled so I can renotice it properly. The next item is the text amendment, clarification of the terms major and minor. Applicant Ann Harchin, Town Planner, on behalf of the Town of Guilford. Text amendment to clarify provisions for EV charging.
Oh.
I make a motion to table that.
I second the motion.
I will vote with
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
Mr. Freeman, yes. Roger Joyce,
Yes.
Mr. Harrington,
Yes.
Mr. Rizzolo,
Yes.
Mr. Sands,
Yes.
and Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Did I miss Bill Freeman? Bill Freeman voted yes.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Chair, the next item on the agenda is 653 Long Hill Road, map 79, lot 2, zone R5. The applicant owners are Aiden M. Helland and Cassie Helland. This is a special permit to reconstruct and enlarge an existing non-conforming garage per section 8.2.E. And is the applicant present?
Is the applicant or a representative present?
Casey, you're muted at the moment.
Yep, you can unmute yourself and present your project.
Hi, guys. I'm Aiden Helland.
Hey, Casey, go ahead.
So we're looking to basically rebuild our garage. It's just beyond repair and it doesn't really fit our needs anymore. So we really don't want to increase the initial footprint, but I do want to increase the height. And it is
Where are you on Long Hill Road?
I am just south of the Country Tavern a little bit.
Okay, right.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I will share their site plan.
Thank you. If I might ask, how long have you lived there?
25 years, about.
So you know your neighbors?
Yes. Yep. We actually bought the house from my wife's mother, so we've both been in the neighborhood a long time.
Mr. Chair, if I could just point out a couple things here. So you see, this is the wrong drawing. Let me see if I have another one. Hold on. Yeah. Okay, give me a second here. I gotta.
Yeah, it's not making sense right now.
It's pre-existing nonconformity. I'm gonna stop for a second here so I can play in my computer.
So, but to not get ahead of Ann, but you are basically putting or enlarging an existing garage on the same footprint?
Well, the enlargement would be the height.
Okay, all right. And it's off-road.
Yes.
I think, Ann,
Yep.
I have the Google Maps view up because they don't have a picture of it in the front. That made clear for me what the actual change looks like. It makes it clear kind of how the elevation would change. I don't know if that would help you.
I will.
Now I understand what they're doing.
Okay, let me give you. You are able to share, and I'm going to keep looking for the correct site.
It's obvious that Bob is angling for the town planner job.
Oh, no.
Yeah, right.
Okay, we're gonna, so this is your garage. I'm in the right spot, right?
Correct, yes.
So when I was looking at the plan, it looked like nothing was changing, but I can see here now where you've got this one slope low level and you're changing the elevation. So this is, I imagine, more reasonable to stand in.
Yeah, I can't even pull my vehicle in that side.
Oh yeah, look at that. You're right. That Jeep is gonna hit.
And so we took, looking at that with this site plan, we swung the back right corner towards the left a little bit to increase the size from 9'7" off the property line to 10'7". So we gained an additional foot over there.
I have
Yeah.
I actually have the plan
Stop
up.
sharing. I can bring up the other plan. Oh, you got it too.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, good. So you have other outbuildings there?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So it really is just the same footprint, but a higher elevation.
Yeah, so my right now my total building height is 13'9" with average height of 11.5, just over. I want to increase the average height by about 4 feet and the total height by 8 feet.
Mm-hmm. So are you adding storage to above the garage?
Exactly.
Yeah, makes sense.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just to point out that this is a pre-existing non-conforming structure. I asked the applicant why it was, if we're demoing and rebuilding the entire garage, why we weren't making it a conforming structure in terms of setbacks. that's an issue you may want to discuss.
That was a question I wanted to ask, and thank you. So it is non-conforming in terms of setback from the adjoining neighbor?
Yes. Grossly non-conforming. It should be at 20 feet. It will be at 10.7.
Yeah.
Okay. And, okay, so I'd like to hear comments from the applicant, and I would assume you've already talked to your neighbors about this?
Yes. No issues from them. If to move it over to be conforming, it wouldn't give me access to pull into the garage. It would be tucked behind my house.
Right, right.
You could rotate it though and become conforming fairly easily.
I could, but I just,
You'd have to change.
it just would, it wouldn't line up with the house and my approach from the driveway. I would have to drive through my parking to then swing into the garage. I mean, I have to live here and like the way it looks. I don't know if I just seeing it on an angle like that doesn't make sense to me.
Plus, you are kind of encroaching a bit on the septic area, if that is what I'm seeing there.
Yeah.
So is it appropriate now to ask for questions from commissioners?
Yeah, thank you, Sean. I have one question. This plan doesn't indicate where the Watson's home or any other buildings on the Watson's property may be. Do we have a sense of that?
It's on here. The other buildings on the property?
No, the buildings on the Watson's property, adjoining property. Just curious about where their buildings may be.
So they're set up similar to me, where their house and garage are on the far right side of their property.
There's a lot of space there.
Yeah.
Actually, I just called up a Google view myself, and there's acres between the two homes.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions from commissioners?
I just want to be clear that the reason this is non-conforming is because it's too close to the adjoining neighbor's property. And that you've discussed this with the neighbor and the neighbor doesn't have an issue with this?
Correct. I didn't approach him, but he got my letter and he came over and knocked on the door and told me he had zero issues with it.
Okay.
And so, just confirm the commissioners that this applicant has notified properly all of the adjoining neighbors.
Yes.
Thank you. Because we have some applicants who are not they're not doing that. So
yeah, I have been double checking that so that we aren't even bringing applications forward unless they've done the proper noticing, because without the proper noticing, your decisions can just be thrown out and everybody has to start all over.
Right.
And given that this is a tear down and rebuild, and it's non-conforming, does that require a variance? Or
No,
just approve that?
Because of the language of 8.2.e, which is very, very broad, and I can bring that language up if you want. You have granted yourselves as the commission the ability to grant special permits for reconstructions, renovations, additions. The list is almost exhaustive, instead of requiring folks to go to the ZBA.
Okay,
So
thank you.
can I have a quick question? Is the height within zoning code?
The average height is 16.5, which is less than 20, and the accessory, well, from the zoning table, average building height, it is 22 where 25 is allowed.
Okay, and we're making it less non-conforming by moving it off the property line. Just
Only less non-conforming by about a foot, but still grossly non-conforming.
Yeah, but
but
it's
it
non-conforming, but the
always,
neighbor
it
doesn't
always
care.
was.
Yeah.
It always
Right.
was.
Yeah, but the neighbor doesn't care.
Yeah, right.
I say we should open it up for public comment.
I would agree, Bob. Does anyone among the attending public have any comments or questions? I see none. Silence.
I don't see why we shouldn't approve this.
Yeah.
We have to close
Mr. Is it Helen?
Yes.
We appreciate your patience with this hearing, and we will work to approve or deny.
render a decision.
Thank you.
And typically now what we're doing, Ann, is we're closing them and then voting immediately. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I make a motion that we close this.
I will entertain a motion.
Bill just made one, I'll second it.
Okay, here we go. Mr. Joyce,
Yes.
Mr. Harrington,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Sands,
Yes.
and I will vote yes.
Thank you, guys.
That was just a motion to close the hearing.
I know, now we have,
Okay.
yes.
Just making
Let's-
sure.
Let's move. Can we move forward on this one or move on to Stonehouse?
I will
Let's
make
just-
a motion.
Let's
to
vote
approve
on
it.
this one.
All right,
Let's deal with this one.
All right, do I hear a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the application there.
And I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman.
Discussion?
Discussion?
Or Phil, yes.
Thank you.
I will-
Again, while it's non-conform, I think anyone who had an 1800 barn and then wanted to, rebuild an office, I think if it's non-conforming and non-conforming structure, if they're gonna tear it down, we should at least allow them to keep it where it was, and they are improving it, although it be, grossly non-conforming. If this were a new site, it's a different story. It wasn't a pre-existing structure.
Right.
I could not agree more. It's an improvement of a non-conforming structure that the neighbors do not disagree with. So
Yeah, so why not?
I know.
And if we're lucky, the next
Well, I
time
mean,
they rebuild it,
the-
it'll be another foot further away.
The
And they
argument
did
against
do
it,
that. Yes.
the argument against it is if they're tearing it down, then you should require the new structure to be within the setbacks. But we don't have that requirement to do it.
No.
No, but I think you have to look at the geometry of the site and, his house and his septic and all these things, if he was in the middle of a field and, and it was over there and you could say, yeah, move it over for 5 feet.
Hey, listen, from my point of view, and, I'm maybe going away from whatever code says, if you are not going to disturb your neighbor, your existing neighbor, and you are improving your property, I just don't see what the problem is.
There's one other factor I see here. I asked that question about the location of the neighbors' own buildings, and they're quite distant from the property line. And further, the property line is heavily wooded, so this new building is not even visible from the neighbor's standpoint. So I think it makes a lot of sense to approve this and proceed.
Thank you.
Let's
Do I hear a
vote.
motion?
We already made one. I think this is
I
discussion.
made one, seconded, so now we vote.
Let's vote.
Okay, Ted, you go first.
Yes.
Roger,
Yes.
Bob,
Aye.
Larry,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
and again,
Good luck
thank
with
you
your project.
Thank you,
Yes.
guys.
Thank you so much.
for your patience.
Okay, Mr. Chair, the next item on the agenda is 184 Stonehouse Lane, map 34, lot 44, zone R3. Applicant owner Mike and Patty Bohan, special permit for an accessory structure exceeding 750 square feet. I would ask that this application be tabled. They are at the Inland Wetlands Commission tonight and need that approval prior to you proceeding with the application.
So do we need a motion to table?
Yes.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion to table this item to our next meeting.
And I will second that.
Mr. Joyce,
Yes.
Mr. Harrington,
Yes.
Mr. Rizzolo,
Yes.
Mr. Sands,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
and Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
And I will vote yes.
Excellent. The next item on the agenda is the start of the site plan reviews. The first one is 102 Broad Street, AKA 16 Church Street, map 39, lot 37, zone R1. The applicant is Joshua Ellman. The owner is Doug Anderson. This is a site plan application for a specialty sign with a non-conforming use in a residential district per section 7.2.E.5.B. I will notice for the record that at least one of the two signs subject to the hearing have already been installed.
That is news to me. So maybe the the applicant or the owner would like to tell us
Hi.
why that is.
So I was saying that I was trying to open before the meeting, and
Can you state your name and your address for the record, please?
Oh, hi, I'm Josh Ellman, owner of the Greenery,
16 Church Street.
16 Church Street.
Thank you.
So I talked to Abby in charge of signage and told her I'm opening. So I didn't permanently put it up. It's just hanging on carabiners so they could be taken down. Because I didn't want to get anybody upset or anything. And yeah, so it's just temporary right now. But once you guys give me the go ahead, I could hopefully get that all fixed in properly.
In the old Blazing Donuts place.
Yes.
So, and just for the record, what would regulation normally that you wouldn't display the sign until the approvals are made? I frankly,
Yeah.
I think the fact that it's hanging on carabiners is a little bit irrelevant to having the sign out, but
I personally met up with the first selectman and told him what I got to get to do to get open. And I told him it would be on carabiners, and he was like, I don't see why that should be a problem. You got to open, so it's just hanging up on carabiners. It's not permanently put on in case in case you guys had to see it down or see that I could just unclip it. But I personally sat down with a meeting with the first selectman because I was trying to open for a little while, and he understood that that I can't do until the meeting takes place. And I was like, I get it. I understood, because I went to one of them the other day with the historical district for the signage as well. So I learned how this whole town committee works properly. But first selectman did give me that's what you got to do to get open. And it's just for the next few days, and it's on little hooks. Like, that's fine.
I believe we got ourselves in some hot water in a similar situation to something like this,
Yeah,
but
we did, Phil, yes.
Oh, I wasn't trying to get any hot
no,
water.
it's okay. We learned.
Okay, yeah, I'm learning everything. This is I'm a small business owner. I've owned the greenery, the salad truck. That's literally was 20 feet from here. I've opened that, and it's moved so fast that I'm lucky enough to be able to open a brick and mortar.
Yeah.
So, Ann, I'm sorry. Back to my question. What were we waiting on?
Well, they have to have site plan approval for sign approval. So
Isn't this the thing we kind of were discussing at one of the other meetings?
well, this is why I asked you last month if you wanted us to be able to sign off on it, and you all said categorically no. And I said, okay, well, you'll be seeing site plan applications for signs. So, if you would like, I can share my screen so you can take a look at what he's applying for.
Hi, Ann. Thank you,
I think
Ann.
we'd all like to see that. And, you know, we want it to be, you know, we want it to be tasteful and within our limits of approval.
Yes, sir. You're gonna love it. Very small, very clean. Everything is very Victorian, old Guilford, beautiful.
All right. So are you actually replacing the donut place?
Yes.
Yes.
You are.
Donuts are gone.
Donuts have been gone for over a year, sir.
They might get out of town.
Well, I went there once and never went back.
See, I like the fact that I can see it. That looks great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's one, this circular sign, that's the one that's up. And then the second would be the text above the doorway and the window there.
Okay.
And the outside has been painted before I came here by the landlord. It's like a nice charcoal, old Victorian look. Not the yellow color anymore too. So it's not so
Oh wow. Okay.
Not as bright.
not as bright. I made it a lot calmer looking and very
clean.
Very clean, like the Polo Club, New York City, dark green.
So you're probably gonna do stuff that people can walk over to the green and just carry over to the green and eat, right?
Yeah.
Correct, sir. I've been on the green for over almost 2 years now. So my old location was my mobile truck that is parked literally 24 feet. So everyone's happy, the local businesses and the town itself. I do I did over 900 salads last year and this year for the every town employee.
I can tell you who's not happy. My children, because there's no more donuts and salads instead.
Tell me about it.
But we do salads now, so a little bit of healthier options out there.
They are going to be offering a donut salad.
That's a good special to think about.
So I've been talking with Alex from Bella V on doing some collabs with some of her like croissants and like a chicken Caesar salad in the croissant and like cool out of the box type stuff. I did something with Pasta Vest today where they made me a fresh focaccia bread for my place. So I try to get everybody in the town and I try to do stuff with all the other chefs. I've talked to the chef at South Lane and I try to keep it all small town stuff. I live 4 minutes up the street.
All right. Well, thank you. Any comments from commissioners?
Yeah, so it seems the circular sign replaces the circular sign for the donut shop. The banner over the top of the frieze replaces a similar sign. And there was a sign on the window, which is not allowed, that the donut shop had, and they took it down. So it seems they haven't done, we're not doing any stylistic thing that wasn't there before.
So in formal terms, they removed a nonconformity.
I don't know about that.
It may not have been non-conforming at the time, but it's.
I know.
Not allowed now.
All right. Any other comments from commissioners?
Everything changes and everything stays the same.
I think this is a reasonable request.
I I think
Get
it's
it off the carabiners. Put it like in-
Yeah.
I've been dying to. I've been dying to. You should.
I'm
I
trying-
took it down at night because I was worried about wind too. I was like, the last thing I want to do is be unsafe. That's not how you start business well.
Yeah.
I think, Sean, I think the changes here are actual improvement to the property. I think the graphics are very tasteful and in keeping with the surrounding buildings. I like it.
I would agree. Any comments from the public, either for or against?
This is not a public hearing item.
Oh,
Just a site plan.
Yep.
oh, site plan.
So can we go to approval now?
Motion, yeah.
I'll make a motion that we approve the signage as was presented to us, and I assume you're going to reattach it with something a little more firm.
I already got it. I'm about to do it right now. You'll see me when you drive by.
Don't do it at night.
Do I hear
I'm
a second?
going up there tonight.
I'll second that, Sean. Second that motion.
Thank you. And we'll take a vote. Mr. Joyce?
Yes.
Mr. Harrington?
Yes.
Mr. Rizzola?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman? Yes. Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
And Mr. Sands?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Good luck.
Thanks
Thank
for,
you. Come by and see us.
thanks for being in Guilford.
See you soon.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
guys. Good night, Ann.
Good night.
Bye, Ann.
The next item on the agenda is 300 Boston Post Road, map 49, lot 5A, zones PRB 3 and R3. Applicant Anthony LaFaux, I hope I haven't killed that name, of American Sign Inc. on behalf of owner Guilford Tower LLC. This is a site plan application for a wall sign and a freestanding sign in a business district per section 7.2.f.2.a and b.
No.
Is anybody here from the applicant to present the project?
Anyone here for 300 Boston Post Road?
Mr. Chair, I can show you the application and then you can decide what you'd like to do, if that's appropriate.
Sure, show us the application.
Yeah.
Okay, give me a second.
If an applicant isn't willing to, show up for business, then I don't know.
Well, it is 9:30.
They could have had a flat or who knows what.
Let me get, sorry, my computer's very slow remotely.
But Ann, while you're doing that, give us a take on this. I mean, what's the?
Could be that they forgot, could be that they didn't listen to Abby, that they had to show up. This is a new signage package for the, I don't even know what it's existing,
The Comfort Inn?
yes,
Yes.
the Comfort Inn. They're replacing their branding. I don't know if they've been sold to Hilton. So there's one sign on the building for Spark by Hilton. I'll go back to
Can you enlarge that a little?
So,
this.
so look, I'll just stop you right there. It looked like the signage on the right is smaller than the signage on the left.
Correct.
Yeah, I think so.
Are they asking for additional signage?
Well, there's that one, and then let me just make sure there's nothing else here. You have blank pages. Okay, and then there's a second sign at the street. Ground mounted on this, whatever structure's there now. Again, replacing the Comfort Inn sign with this Spark by Hilton. This sign is 3 by 5 for the purpley blue part of it, and the height is 12 feet, which is virtually equivalent to what's out there today.
Is it
So it's,
illuminated?
so it's not substantially different from what's there right now.
What's happened is that they have franchised to somebody else.
Right.
No, that's not the point. What we're trying to figure out is whether they are enlarging their signage.
Oh, no, it's the same deal. It's just that they've instead of being a Comfort Inn, they're now a Spark by Hilton. But your point is well taken, that the two signs that they're asking for are replacing existing signs.
Is the new Spark sign illuminated internally?
I assume it is. Let me see what they say here.
I would assume so, Phil. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
It says night view, no scale, so, but doesn't. Authorization. Yep, we've got no text on it. I assume so, but it's actually, the drawings don't actually say so.
Did I see something that said sign is existing face change only?
Yeah, that's probably what they're doing, is just keeping the same frame and then just.
Yep, there it is. It's on the first page. And it is internal LED.
Oh, good for you. I didn't see that.
Right there. Method of lighting.
Oh, there you go.
light
Yeah.
purple.
On their electric bill.
Yeah. So
they'll still have to compete with their neighbor for outside lighting at night.
All right. So the question is, the applicant is not here. It is, as someone else pointed out, it is late. Do we move forward with this without the applicant in?
I don't think the applicant's required to show.
I don't.
No, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah. I mean,
I think we just disapprove it because
I don't have a problem with the signage change.
No, neither do I.
Yeah, and if we had any burning questions, we could ask them to come back next month, but I'm feeling.
I think that is.
Yeah.
Not necessary.
Yep.
It only matters if we don't understand something or we need clarification, which I don't think any of us need.
No, and I don't think
I
there's.
would make a motion that we approve this application.
Okay, Ted, let me just ask to be absolutely sure there's no one in attendance, and I don't think there is, but I'm going to ask anyway, who has, I think we've heard the commissioner's comments. I want to make sure that there's no one in attendance who has any comments or questions or objections or.
Well, this is just a site plan. There's no public hearing, right?
There's no public hearing here.
That's correct, but you can always ask.
Okay.
Yeah.
Reflexive. I'm just being reflexive. All right.
We have a motion and I'll second it.
Okay. Then we'll take a vote. Roger.
Yes.
Mr. Harrington.
For variety. We.
I want to hear the next vote, and I want to hear what you say. Larry?
Yes.
Mr. Sands?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman? Mr. Freeman?
Said yes.
Oh, you froze for a second.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. I will vote yes. Move on.
Excellent. Okay, next item on the agenda is 1486 Boston Post Road, map 52, lot 11, zone PRB2, applicant owner Frank DeAndrea of 1486 Boston Post Road, LLC. Minor modification to approved site plan for planting and slope changes. This is related, I will just say so that we can do it all at once, to the request under other business for partial release of bond. The background here is when Frank came in for his modification to his Dunkin' Donuts site plan, which phased the project into 3 phases. He did not at that time submit revised planting plans. So when he came back to me to ask for a C of O, I couldn't sign off on the C of O because the planting plans on the record do not match what is in the field. So we asked Frank to circle back with his proposed, though already installed, changes to the planting plan so that everything is as it should be. The request for the bond release is, and I will let Marjorie speak to this more, but is related to this C of O for the first phase of the project. As you recall, he broke the project into 3 phases and had posted a bond to cover essentially the first 2 phases. The ordinance language does not address partial releases of bonds. So you have a 2-part question in front of you. One is the site plan, and the second, what you would like to do about this request for release of bond. And I will let Marjorie take it from there.
Good evening again, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. I'm Marjorie Shansky, and I represent 1486 Boston Post Road LLC. I'm here this evening with Frank D'Andrea from the LLC and with Marcy Paluzzi, who is the landscape architect of record at this point, and Mr. Clayton Massey, who was the excavator who, at the time of the installation of the septic system, as I understand it, obtained Sonia's sign-off on the alteration of the retaining wall and the manner of the treatment of the slope that gave rise to a deviation from the original approved landscape plan. So as Ann said, we've been here, this was originally approved in 2022. We were back for modification in 2023 in October, and in June for the phasing, I believe. And so the essence of what is before the commission this evening is, I think, what the commission requested and is entitled to have, which is a plan that conforms to what has transpired on the parcel. I will say that some of the supporting material that is provided with this application was the plant list, and that does match to the extent it does all of the required planting or original planting that was installed in conformity with the original landscape plan. And as I explained in the last meeting, I think that it was both easement modification and this slope septic system basis that gave rise to the other changes. So what the commission has now before it, and Ms. Paluzzi can discuss it with you as you wish, is a landscape plan that reflects the actual site. To some extent, there are plantings additional to what was originally approved, but in any case, there's now a match between the plan before the commission and what one sees on the site. I will also say, with respect to the bond release, that my understanding of what's on file with the town is for the completion of phase 1, and therefore it's not really a partial release that we're seeking. We would like release of the bond. We're requesting release of the bond because there's a C of O and now a conforming landscaping plan at the pleasure of the commission. I will also say that phase 2, which is the additional or the second structure, is someplace in indeterminate future. And then the third phase has to do with the implementation of whatever the neighbors project is going to be. So this is sort of the culmination and completion of phase 1 for the commission's consideration. And if you'd like to hear from Ms. Paluzzi, she's here. Or if you have any questions about that.
I guess I do. Do you have the renderings about what was submitted and approved originally versus what is currently in place?
Well, I'm sure.
No.
Sorry, go ahead.
Do you want me to speak? Hi, my name is Marcy Paluzzi. I'm a licensed landscape architect for many years in the state of Connecticut. I also serve on the Branford Planning and Zoning Commission for many years. So I understand a lot of how the conversation has transpired tonight. When I was brought into the project, the previous landscape architect who did a hand-drawn drawing had retired, and they were unable to get hold of him. And so I came on to the project and on 2 occasions and verified what was put in and redid the drawing on the engineer's base plan, and to my best, identified the plantings that matched and updated the plant list accordingly. I haven't done an exact count based on, total number of plants proposed on the sketch versus the, what's actually there. My sense is that there's more plants planted than what was originally proposed, but I can't, specifically verify that question, if that's one of your questions.
Thank you.
I'm gonna maybe put Ann on the spot, but Ann, how dramatically did the original landscape plan differ? I know that because Frank had to go into phases and change the back wall and some of the landscape in the back may have changed things, but how dramatically did the planting plan differ from what design review and other people?
Yeah, the revised plan, the major change is the change to that rear slope. As you may recall, because of the discovery of the easement required that for whatever reason was not discovered until later, what had been a planted slope became more steep, and thus riprap had to be installed. And so all of that rear area that was going to be a planting bed now has become riprap stone. I can bring up the applications. I don't have great drawings, but I can show you, if you just give me a second, I can show you what was approved.
Sure, I can give you a second, but tell me the plantings that were not affected by the change in the landscaping in the back, which required the stonework and all that kind of stuff, was the frontage of the property substantially consistent with the original plan?
Yes.
Thank you.
And was the town involved in the aspect of changing the slope and rip-wrapping it and what have you?
The health department was involved.
Okay. So.
And that sign off was included in the application package, along with
that's really off the table then at this point.
a letter, including a letter from Mr. Massey. Yes.
So what are we actually approving here?
Essentially a modification that codifies the changes to the planting plan that were necessitated by the change in slope at the rear of the property and the phasing of the project.
Right. And secondarily, it's the request that we do something that is not explicitly accommodated within our code, which is for a partial bond release.
But if I heard Marjorie correctly,
Marjorie was asking for a total bond release.
Right. So.
Right, and I think
even though the project is not completed.
Well, that was the point of the phasing, though. The point of the phasing is that when Frank initiates the second phase, he will post a bond for it. The bond that's currently posted is to secure the performance of the first phase. And since putatively there's no additional work to be done in the first phase.
My understanding, Attorney Shansky, is that I don't think the original bonding distinguished between phases.
It did not. It included the cost, the full cost for construction of what is now considered phase 2.
So.
because we got estimates for that.
So if I'm understanding this, he's gonna have to come back for a bond if he goes into phase 2 or 3?
Only if he's asking for a C of O before he's completed the work.
I will say that the whole basis for the application to recognize the phasing was to liberate the bond that was not associated with the current construction that led to the C of O for the Duncan, so that holding money on which there's no construction and no immediate obligation is just sort of, the town is not a bank. This is to secure a performance, and there's no implicit requirement of performance until he initiates phase 2.
And to be clear, if I may, the original request from Mr. DeAndrea was for a partial release of bond. So if you're considering the release of the entire bond, then we need to clean up the paperwork of that specific request.
Can
I make a comment?
If I can just say one thing before you do, and that is that at the time he made that request, we were still embroiled in the landscape discussion. So he was looking for that part of the bond that related to other than this final piece. So we're happy to clean up the paperwork, but the point is that should the commission accept this verification of the actual planting plan, there is no further performance in phase 1 that's outstanding, and the bond should be eligible for release.
Hi, I'm Frank DeAndrea. First of all, thank you all for being here, and I'm really also sorry to hear that people are going down there and being unruly. That's completely unacceptable. But I just want you to know that I did not pull any kind of permits for the second building. That could be a couple years out. We're not sure financially when that's going to be feasible. So this wraps it up. And the reason I did request a partial release of the bond, because it is a substantial cash bond and it's tying up a lot of our money, I really wanted to get it before this meeting. That's why my letter was, I said before the meeting, I would have liked to have a partial release of it. If I had known that was going to be denied, then I would have just said, okay, we'll go for the full release at the meeting, which I understood it was, I don't want to say it was denied, but it was pushed to this meeting. So that's all I want to say. But there is no, I never pulled any permits for the second building. We did everything that was in the phase, septic, we ran the lines, we did everything that was required to minimize the site work if and when I do pull that, those permits, and that's really what I had, but thank you.
And help me out here. I'll play devil's advocate. If Frank goes to pull permits, can we then say, in order to get the permits, you have to establish a bond for this phase? I mean,
only for soil erosion sedimentation control under our ordinance. You can't force him at the beginning of construction to bond for the entire site. The kind of bond we're carrying now is only allowed under the current regulations at the time of the issuance of a conditional certificate of zoning compliance, essentially a temporary C of O. So you can't.
But by that time, everything's already built and done, right?
Right, but that's the whole point of that bond, is that it allows folks to get the mechanism of the C of O without having completed their landscape work. Because sometimes the timing's off, right? It's like the middle of summer and you can't plant, or it's the middle of winter and you can't plant, and somebody wants to open.
Okay, let's not get tied up too much in planning. I want to understand the terms of the bond related to the totality of the original plan, not the phase plan, the totality of the original plan. And do we have the discretion to to, approve giving up the bond if the project is not completed.
Project is completed. Phase one is
The
completed.
project, the money that's in place for the bond now has been completed. And
Okay.
if we just need to give Frank his money back, and when he comes back for whatever else he wants to do in a few years, he can do the work, but then if he can't get the CO because it's spring or fall or whatever the thing, then he would put a bond in place to guarantee that he would do the work. If I got that correct.
Yeah, and I think
I agree.
the only reason you're discussing it now is because of the language that Frank used in his original request was for a partial release of bond.
Right.
And that confused me. And I'm like, we don't have a mechanism for that. Otherwise, had he used just the terminology after this approval, I would like my bond back. We could just do that administratively. No involvement of the commission. We have the authority to, staff has the authority to do so.
It seems that's the right thing to do at this point. Just proceed.
Yeah, after you approve this, if you approve this plan.
Of course.
That would be the plan under site plan review.
Yes.
So I make a motion that we accept the site plan review as presented.
Second.
So I would like to raise a question. It seems this is the second time since I've been on this commission that we've been asked to approve something after the fact. And we've set a precedent, we're maintaining that precedent, and that makes me uncomfortable. We've had our first selectman who I admired greatly and greatly support, but this is the second time he's approved something that should have come to us for approval. And I find these things bothersome, and I'm wondering how other people feel about that.
I agree 100% with you, Larry, but I don't think it's either the green guy, salad guy, or Frank's issue. I think it's another issue that
Oh,
should
yeah. Yeah, I agree. But the other issue, the proving things after the fact, I don't know what a remedy is.
Well, I think
don't have a problem.
I think part of the issue is, to the best of my knowledge in listening to this, all of the outward facing plantings are fairly conforming with the original plan. I don't have I asked, we have the original to compare. And the thing that's changed is the back. And I get it, things happen during construction projects. And I wouldn't have called the back, wall screening or plantings as a dramatic changer of the plan. I mean, yeah, it's a change. I get it. We're approving it after the fact, but it's not like, they clear cut the front and just threw some stuff in the back. I mean, I think other than the back screening, it's substantially as we approved.
Well, and a town official was involved in the change for the back.
Right. And I think that's different than what Larry was talking about a little bit.
Yeah.
I think Larry's more concerned that there was another influence involved in tonight and in the past that kind of creates these kerfuffles in our group that we need to figure out a way to address.
It seems the phasing on this project, which occurred, 6 months ago, perhaps, clearly changed the basis for the original bond. The scope of the work changed, and all that was understood. I don't see any reason for not releasing the full bond at this point, since all that work has been completed.
I agree.
Me too.
Harrington, do you have any opinion on this? You're on mute.
Does limit opinions.
Oh no. I'm trying to avoid that. I think that so the only difference is the screening in the back, and that's the screening for the people who live behind the Dunkin' Donuts, right?
I think it was that the pitch had to be changed. So it's not like they were building up, to the best of my knowledge, not correct me if I'm on the wrong track. It's not like they were planting big trees to create barriers.
Oh, okay. It's just they
I
couldn't.
think it was
plant
more of
stuff
a
on-
ground cover situation.
They couldn't
Okay.
plant the plants on the slope, so they had to put what's called riprap, which is just big rocks.
Yep. Okay, as long as it's not like they're not putting up screening that their neighbors were expecting to have, so they didn't have to stare at a Dunkin' Donuts.
And there's a fence all along the back, isn't there?
I don't think I'm allowed to speak, right?
No, you
Not
can
really.
talk.
This
Okay,
isn't your
well-
house, Frank.
All right. Well, yes. So we were in contact with the neighbor with the fence. We let her pick the fence, her style, her color. She was, yeah. So none of that has to do with that. And the bank is basically, stabilized. And yes, we didn't try to do anything after the fact. We did, have Sonia's approval. My site guy Clayton did talk to her and say that to stabilize that bank, with the septic, and Janice even punted it to Sonia and said, I'd rather Sonia make that because she knows more about the septic systems, is what happened. So that's how that came about. And yes, everything should be planted accordingly. I did extensive landscaping. We actually added some landscaping where our tractor trailer is supposed to pull. We added some along the drive-through line where it just looked barren. So
Right.
Marcy is correct. There's probably an additional 40 plantings. And like you guys said, everything is done on site. The paving is done. It was not when we first applied. The landscaping wasn't done. The utilities weren't run to where the second building is, but all of that has been completed. So I will shut up. It's late. I apologize, but once again, thank you.
Okay, Marcy, again, if I could just add 2 cents. In addition to the fence, there is a mature woodland area on the back side of the property. So when I was out there, I couldn't even see the neighbors' buildings, or I didn't notice them, I should say. You know, and then everything else has been in response to, you know, things on the site, but the types and quantities of plantings has remained consistent. The general approach to arrangement is consistent, and the only additions to what was already proposed was to increase along the foundation and to increase better screening of the loading space area. So, you know, that's really just trying to be a better business owner, in my opinion.
Sounds like improvements.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Ann, based on the filing and the fact that this was posted publicly as a partial bond release, can we act on this tonight, or can we?
Yeah, there's no notice requirement for this, for the
Okay.
bond part of
Right,
this
right.
item. So you need to vote on the site plan, and then you can just ignore the bond question, because Frank and Marjorie are going to send me a letter tomorrow that says they request A, the C of O sign off, and B, the release of the bond subsequent to the C of O sign off, and the commission doesn't have to act on it at all.
Okay.
So there was a motion and there was a second, and then Larry had a question, and now we're back to voting or more questions.
Right. So what we're voting on is the modification of the approved site plan.
Yes, the planting plans in particular. Yes.
Right. And that was moved and seconded.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Joyce,
Yes.
Mr. Harrington,
Yes.
thank you. Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Sands.
Duh.
That's Russian for yes.
That was a yeah. Okay.
I knew that.
I knew it.
Mr. Rizzolo.
Bien sûr.
Yeah. Ooh.
Mr. Freeman.
Louis
And I all vote aye.
or Frank.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
On to other business. We were going to discuss updates on the planting concerns at 14 Benton's Knoll, but the attorney is still working on finding a qualified landscape restoration ecologist is what I would suggest at this point. We keep getting plans from Madison Earth Care, which are decorative in nature, and so there's nothing really to update. They're in the process of looking for somebody else. The plan of conservation and development, we kicked off our first meeting at the beginning of December. We have a steering committee meeting next week, and we have a series of conversations with the 30+ boards and commissions from the town. We invited every single board and commission chair and vice chair to pick a slot of time to come talk to us.
And this will stretch over Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, I thought we'd get a lot more response than we have. We have about a day and a half worth of slots filled, which would be about 15 slots. So about half of the commissions have responded. The other half have not. Sean, can you think of anything else on the plan that we need to talk about?
No, just a reminder to Mr. Freeman that our steering committee is on Monday.
It's at night, right?
No.
No.
Yeah, very funny.
So, and so if one of us wanted to sign up for a slot, we could do that?
Well, I suppose on behalf of the commission, you could.
What I would suggest, Larry, I'm sorry, Ann.
That's okay.
If you are part of a committee, commission, board that is already signed up and you want to be part of that, that's great.
I think if the question revolves around a discussion with the Planning and Zoning Commission, then we will have ample time for discussion and input for this commission itself as the process moves forward. So I don't think there needs to be a separate slot for this commission, but if your membership or representation on other commissions you would like to weigh in on, then you should check. I know Affordable Housing has requested a slot, so you may want to join them at that discussion.
Right. And Roger and Bill and I are on the steering committee. So, when we have something meaningful, substantial to report back to the Planning and Zoning Commission, we will do so. But we're at the starting gate.
Okay, any other questions on that? No? Okay. We have two other items to deal with. The first is a required advisory referral for the purchase of the parcel at 505 Whitfield Street, which is unique ID 3304. I'm going to bring up.
And this, just for the commissioners' information, this was not on your agenda.
Well, it was on the agenda. The agenda evolves over the month, so this was on the posted agenda.
It was not an updated agenda that I saw.
Well, and for the record, I still don't know why this type of purchase comes to us, but I'm willing to listen.
It's a requirement of state statute under the planning and zoning ordinance.
It's a mandatory referral.
Under 8-24. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to bring up the document that I wrote for you guys. Okay, so a little background. 505 Whitfield is the parcel that the Mooring Restaurant was last occupying. The owner had put it on the market last summer sometime. It is a truly coastal site. It is deep within the FEMA flood zone. Our current regulations for a conforming use, i.e. not another restaurant, would require almost an impossible standard to meet for redevelopment for anything other than a restaurant. The restaurant itself is what's considered a repeated loss category under FEMA because of the claims that have been made due to flooding over the years. And this is not flooding from Irene or Sandy. This is flooding from seasonal high tides. The restaurant probably went out of business because of the repetitive losses there. The tenants were on the hook for those improvements and remodeling. So this parcel came to our attention recently because the owner had an offer by a developer, and the town felt it was important to act judiciously and quickly to acquire the parcel so that we could provide more coastal and waterfront access to the public and preclude other development there. Section 8-24 requires that the Board of Selectmen refer land acquisitions to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and that's why you are hearing it. This little document essentially codifies the fact that this purchase is in alignment with the current plan of conservation and development from 2015, and it preserves both goal 1 and goal 2 of that document, which is preserving Guilford's character, culture, and scenic values. That's goal 1. And to conserve Guilford's lands, waters, and natural areas, which is goal 2. And I think that's about all I have for you. Do you have any questions?
So the statute, and as I'm reading that brief, 8.8-4, we have the submittal in front of the commission, and it's submitted to us for a report. Now, what constitutes a report? What are they seeking in a report?
Just your concurrence, essentially, that it's in alignment with the plan of conservation and development. And that's what that I just showed you on my screen, that would be the report.
Okay, that's great, because I completely endorse the project based on its compliance with our plan of conservation and development.
Do we need to vote, or do we just need to not?
Yes, you do need to vote to adopt the staff report as written.
I'll make a motion to adopt the staff report as written.
Second.
The only question I have is that the letter was talking about they're going to look into possible uses. Are there any that are any direction that they're going with that, or is it not known?
Yeah, there's been some.
I think there are, Bob. I'm not sure I want to put it on a public record about what the ideas are, but they are consistent with the 2015 POCD.
Okay.
There is almost there will be a town meeting, and it will likely be January 28th.
Okay.
See you there.
And can you screen share with me for like 1 minute? Or can I screen share?
You should be able to.
What do I have to do? A little star at the top?
The bottom of your screen, depending on what software you're running, there's a button that says share.
Green.
Then you have to pick which screen you want to share.
Okay, thank you. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
What I particularly like is the dock. It gives you some real perspective on how high the water really does get. But
Which is only going to it's going to accelerate.
Yep, it's going to get worse. Yep.
Just for 400,000.
Yeah. So I think if for those of you who don't know, Phil lives about 200
Part
yards.
three.
200
Part three.
yards, and he is going to have to raise his house.
Nope, not me.
Yeah, that's.
I'm going down with the ship.
That's what you think now. You're an optimist.
If he puts submarine doors and submarine windows, he'll be fine.
Yeah. I'm just gonna build a house that'll float, a houseboat.
A houseboat, yeah, right. So I'll get some pontoons.
Just build a floatable house, that's all.
So did we ever take the vote?
Not yet.
So I think it's fair to say this came upon the selectmen, upon us, upon the town, with relatively short notice. I mean, some may have known about it before others, but it basically became an opportunity that
Good for the town.
for the town, right?
Yeah. And if I may, apologies for missing Christmas lunch. This was what I was working on that day.
That is exactly right. And specifically, she was working on
All the layers of zoning that would be required to develop the site, which made, I was backing into what somebody could do in the worst case scenario.
right. And part of the complications that the town may encounter and any other developer would encounter is FEMA flood zone issues. And Phil just showed that picture. I mean,
You
think
see,
about it.
that was a blue sky too. I mean, that wasn't
Yeah, I know. So that's what Ann, and Ann, I hope Robin delivered your lunch to you.
She did. Thank
Okay.
you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So she's proven herself trustworthy.
Oh, with lunches.
So we still need to vote.
All right, do we need a motion?
We've got a motion and a second.
All right, let's, I'll go in the opposite direction. Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Sands,
Yes.
you're still with us, Ted?
Yep.
Okay. Larry,
Yes.
Mr. Harrington,
Yes.
Mr. Joyce,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes.
Excellent.
One more.
Our
item.
last item is the approval of minutes from the December 4th meeting. Robin said she got comments back from Roger, I think, and there was only one missing period, which I commended her on. Like, she's getting the hang of it. So there you go.
Ted, do you have any comments?
Well, he wasn't at the
Wasn't
meeting.
at the meeting.
Oh, okay. Well,
I did read the minutes and they seem substantially correct to me.
I did too, and I agree with Mr. Freeman.
So I'll move approval.
So all in favor, raise your hands.
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
And I like the fact
Aye.
that Robert
How
is
many
taking
people
over.
see that was
there.
12 to 0?
I think we are at the point that you've all been anticipating and waiting for, which is adjournment.
Yes.
It's done.
I'll say aye.
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 And thank you
Frank.
so much for your work. We appreciate it. Thank you, Robin, for staying up late. And thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, we'll see you next month.
See you next
Bye-bye.
Night, everyone.